Okay, welcome. Special council meeting for 2022 budget discussion. Let's call it to order. One thing I want to, before we start, Mike, Mr. Schrupp had asked me to bring in the Johnson, the bills from them, and I just want to read her letter to me, just for the record. Enclosed, please find our summary statement for our detailed statements for professional services through February. As we discussed, in an effort to protect the confidential information in the detailed statements, I have only sent the summary statement to the city clerk. If you would like me to send the detailed statements to someone else, please let me know. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. So Jessica asked me to hold these things. Now apparently that's changed.
We talked about it with Jessica at that last meeting.
Yeah. I mean, so it's changed. So you want these back to you. So I just wanted to read that. I think as far as the budgeting purposes, she's got all the bills. I know that, yeah. The confidential portion.
They're still confidential. I'm putting them in a sealed container.
Okay, well, these
I'm
are.
not going to look at them.
Just so we all know, these are all the ones from Breen and Person and Johnson Killen. So
And I gave you the Breen in person ones. Those are not confidential.
well, they're all the ones that I've received from you. There are some Breen and Person ones.
Right,
in there.
I gave you copies of those.
Okay. This is the whole packet of them. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to come here this afternoon. We have a lot of things on the agenda today, so I'll try to hit the highlights and focus on those types of things. Just a quick scheduling change on here. We've got Cheryl from Planning and Zoning here. I wanted to give a real quick update on what we found out to date. And then once we get into the budget, I know TJ's got a meeting at 2, so we're going to try to get him on first. So Planning and Zoning, update on staffing. At our last council meeting, we talked about posting a job description and asking Sourcewell to come in. I know Dave and Marcia, you were looking down that road. What did you find when you talked to Sourcewell?
I had a call from Charity, somebody from Sourcewell, and they are having trouble staffing. So at this point in time, they are not able to offer us anything.
Okay.
They're looking for people. So that's their status.
Okay, so do you still want them to come to that meeting to talk about?
I would like to, personally.
I would think we'd want to know what's ahead, what they'll be able to provide once they get staffing.
I'm not sure they'd be willing to.
So we haven't asked them, is that correct?
I didn't ask them.
Okay, so
no.
do you want me to follow up on that and ask them to
Yes.
come?
Yeah,
What is-
I would, yeah.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, so before we get, so as far as the job, the job range, I've submitted that information to Jessica, like as we discussed, and said, can you start thinking about a range? You know, I gave her some information from the comp study we did a few years ago, and some other information and some comparative things, and said, we got to start this discussion so we can come up with a range and come back to the council. And you look confused.
I'm listening.
Okay, so we can keep this thing moving forward. So before we get into that, I got to pick on Cheryl since she's here. Here's a letter from the county. I'm not going to read it verbatim. You can look at that, but the short story is, it says, my interpretation of it, it says you have a process that works, you do a good job of it, and can you share your process with us so we can have something that works better? That's coming from the county.
Process for what? For planning and zoning?
Planning and
For the
zoning.
Oh.
So, nice job, Cheryl.
So the county wrote us a letter saying that we're doing a good job with what we're doing and they'd like us to share that information with them. Is that what I'm understanding?
It says, what I'm looking for are the cheat sheets for the finding of facts and answers for a CUP, PLAT, LUMA for the board members. Currently, we only have them for variance, and those applications moving along smoothly as something to look up to come up with answers. And they're just recognizing her for hey, can you help us get better because your process works?
So it sounds like somewhere along the line, they came in here and they set up these procedures, and they've lost their procedures down at the county?
No, they had a different
Just
process.
lost too many people.
They had staff changes. You remember Chris Pence came in
Yeah,
here?
oh, yeah, yeah.
Chris Pence is no longer with them.
Yep.
And Paul Herkenoff, no longer with them. And then they've had a few changes, and what John and Cheryl and Chris and Paul had developed is a process we're using today, and that kind of didn't quite make it all the way back through the county. So they want help with that, and Cheryl has shared her things with them.
They came up with the process, and I just revised it to what I thought was how it goes from.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I mean, like anybody takes over a job, this is what you do, and then you make it personal.
Yeah, so the point is, we still have a good relationship with the county, and we're continuing to share information and what works and what doesn't. So that's where we're at with the staffing side of things. The update on the issuance of septic system permitting, do you want to talk about that, Cheryl, or can I just summarize it for you?
Go ahead.
So the short story is, someone has to do the septic inspections and issue the septic permit for the building process, permits. We don't do that right now, the county does it. The county hires someone to do it for them and charges it back to the person getting the permit. If we ask the county to do that, they would still do that. And if we do it, we'd still have to, well, the county won't do it, but they'll charge us for it, right?
As of January 2022, they will no longer do this. The only way that they would take over is if we took it out of our ordinance and they took everything. The permit fee of ours is $250, I don't know what theirs are. And so they are not set up or will not continue in the same method and charge us what they're being charged. So they get charged $50 and $160. So that's $211 that they get charged at this time that they just pay totally on their own, and we get a free ride. And we had asked them if they would, can you just charge us then for it and continue what we're doing? And they said no. As of January, no, they won't. They won't go that method. But Greg Cosson is the one that they contract with to have it done. So it's not saying we can't get a quote from him and he can continue to do it and we pay him instead of the county paying him. I mean, that's up to you guys, of course.
So Cheryl, how would the permitting process go if we said, just let the county do it?
So if we said let the county do it, there'd be a few catches, like there always is. So if we took everything out of our ordinance and put it into their hands, which some places have, then we wouldn't have the information possibly as soon as we do. Jake even said that some of it would be different time compared to what we're used to. So if we gave it to them, then the residents who want to build, let's just say it's a virgin lot and they want to build a house and a garage and a septic, they'd have to go to the county and get the permit for the septic. And then once they show me that they have a permit for the septic, then they can do another permit here at our city and get the rest for the structures. Because it would be, a two-step, permit there, permit here. As far as compliances go, then of course they would take care of those and all the compliances would go down to there. And then I would look on our system for part of the information, then I'd have to go to the county for the other information that they would be keeping track of. And then hopefully they would keep track of all the spreadsheets that I typically do, as well as certificate of installation. They would be doing that too. So it's not a undoable thing, it's doable, but it's not maybe as smooth. The part that hasn't been worked out, and I have not reached out to anybody at the county because I didn't get permission to do it, is how would it work for variance? Those get to be frustrating for people because it's expensive and there's a lot to do. So they would have to, I guess, get us, if it's a variance for a septic in a house, because it's a small lot, they'd have to go down to the county, fill out all their paperwork and what they need to do and get a variance there. Then they would come up here and they would get a variance for the rest of the project. So, but that's not to say that the county wouldn't allow us to do the whole variance. I don't know, again, didn't have
Okay.
permission to talk to anybody.
You said that they would have to go down to the county and get a variance for the compliant sewer
No,
inspection.
No, they'd have to go down and get a variance if they needed to install or upgrade a septic system that was not meeting setbacks or our ordinance.
They would have to get a variance, or would they have to get a compliance certificate for it? Or,
If it doesn't meet the setbacks and stuff, and they want to upgrade or put a new one in, that's
it
a
would-
variance, and it has to be done either here or there.
I'm just
But
trying
a
to play.
compliance inspection, that's no change, it's just a matter of where it goes and who's keeping the record.
Okay, so what's our alternative? If we didn't want the county to do it, then what do we do?
Well, again, Greg Clausen is doing it for us now. It's just that all the invoices and all the paperwork goes to the county, and then they forward that to me on designs only, septic designs.
New systems.
Sure, yes, yes.
That would be the quickest way for our clients then to do that, is to hire him, and we just
Yes,
send it to
absolutely.
him.
If you like the procedure that's currently in place,
Yeah,
it would be the most expedient and more convenient for our residents to have us hire Greg Clausen or whoever. It's just that Greg is already doing it. He knows our ordinance, so.
and if there's a variance involved and the septic's involved in the variance, they could still all keep that here, and he would go out and do the one end of it and notify us so that the planning commission could work with it.
Exactly, which is what he's doing now. It's just,
Yeah.
we have to get the information from the county, because they're paying the bill.
Right.
don't we-
What's more work for you, the county or keeping it here?
More work for me.
Yeah. For the staff, for your department.
Well, nope, I do all the septic stuff
Yeah.
here. So I keep track of all the spreadsheets, all the compliances that come in, and it's not, to me, what would be less work for me. It would, what's more convenient for the city and our
Right.
residents.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in my opinion, of course, is to keep it in-house.
yeah.
The flip side of that would be, if you had the county do it, they have their system open 24/7. So realtors or Dave, if you had information you wanted to look up,
Yeah,
if it was, within their time period that they took it over, you could look that up 24/7 yourself. For those who are willing to do that and not call the city. That's the only flip side of it. And, right now, everybody's pretty used to just emailing us or calling us, which is fine. But that's the only side that I could see that would actually be an advantage for someone, so.
I think, I don't have a problem with the county taking it over, or keeping it, I should say, keeping it.
Well, they don't have it. We really have it.
They're taking care of it now.
Just the septic designs, period. And the only thing they're taking care of is the expense. And they contracted someone to take care of that for them. And I assume, which is what I assume we would do, is pass that cost on to those who are asking for the permit. So right now, it's $250. If you did go with him, then, it makes sense that you would just boost it up the $215 and charge $465. And then you get a higher level or the same level of service as you're getting now. And you would just pass that cost on. Like I said, I assume the county is too.
so to me, it makes sense to keep it here.
It's what?
Makes sense
Yes.
to keep it here for the residents, and so you're not making 100 calls and trying to figure out where something is, and
Right, 'cause-
somebody's sick and we don't have it, and that type of deal.
But right
Correct.
now, they're going to the county. And then they
No.
come back and they pay a permit for the Cross Lake.
So the only thing, the citizens never go to the county for any septic stuff. Only the designers email it to them. And most of the designers I work with email it to me as well as the county. Because I like to have a heads up of who's got that going. When somebody comes in and wants a house done, I like to know whether that septic design is in process or not.
So they contract out the design.
They contract
county.
out for just approval of the design and installation of the design, which is what we here in the city don't have that means of doing. we would need to do too if you choose to keep it.
So the cost to the individuals right now is 250?
Correct.
And if we keep it in-house, it will remain 250, or then will it go to 411?
That is up to you. You guys can keep it if you
Well, but I
want.
mean-
I'm just saying.
Well,
if-
you'd have to find out what the contractor's going to charge you. We're not going
Right.
to go
And-
behind on it.
At this time, costs and charges, according to the county, Costin charges them $50 and $165. 50 to check it over and then 65 for inspection. That's $215. You can absorb that as a city, or you can, again, pass it on to the residents.
Pass it on.
I mean, that's a pretty inexpensive permit
Right,
already.
but-
I think you should find out for sure what it's going to cost in 2022 with this contractor. What is he going to charge us for the design? And
Again, I
and
did
the
not reach out
certification.
to absolutely anybody because I didn't get any permission to do that.
I'm saying that before there is a decision made here, we should know that dollar amount from the contractor, and if they would even take on the city of Cross Lake.
Again, you're correct, but at this time, he's doing it now. So as far as time schedule.
For the
and cost-
county, he's contracted with the county.
Correct,
I'm
but
saying
he's
if he would be-
doing it, he's still doing our city. So as
What-
far as wondering, does he have time, the cost, I would assume it's the same, it's just where he puts the invoice.
So where
Don't
does the,
assume-
Why don't we have Mike and Cheryl find that out and bring it to our December meeting?
what does the
That makes sense.
$250 that we charge now go toward?
The administration fee, the permit fee, we still go out and look at the site.
So it will be a $460 to cover our costs. It'll go up to that.
If he doesn't change his normal fee in 2022, it would be an additional $215.
Yeah.
At least that's what he's charging the county. It'd be the same thing, just that he would invoice us instead of the county.
Right. But the county, the total cost to the consumer is the same.
Well,
The county's billing somebody and then we're billing somebody, sorry.
the county's actually for us absorbing it. And that's why they don't want to do it any longer. They said, if you give us all the septic stuff,
We're
then
gonna
we
have-
want the permit, we want
Okay.
everything. And then we have to kind of piggyback off of that because we won't be in any control. They will be in control of any new septic, any new permit that's required. If a compliance is needed to build or do something, if they're not doing their job, they will not get the permit from us.
Yep.
I mean, that, and I'm not saying they're not going to do their job. I'm just saying we don't have any control whatsoever. We're going to be at their mercy on whatever their schedule is
Right,
going to be.
which is bad.
So
So-
Cheryl, to date now, I mean, wasn't John doing the septic inspections for new installs?
No,
He never has been?
never
I
been
don't-
So
certified.
this Clausen has been doing it? Okay. Well, I think we should just kind of leave it as much as we can the way it was.
And the other thing would be property transfers. I don't know how well how timely they do it, but I also do property transfers. So here in the city, we're very, it's necessary, we have a lot of water, we take care of our septic, so anytime somebody transfers a property, I go in and look and see, make sure that they have on file either a new installation or a compliance inspection that is still good, hasn't expired. And if not, then I send out letters. They would do that also instead. And again, that would be on their time schedule, and we would have no say. If it's not done, it's not done. It's not part of our ordinance any longer. It's your call. I mean,
Will we be capable of handling that with our present staffing?
everything is already being handled in septic by me. The only thing I don't do is what we would need Greg Costin to do.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that if we take this on, are we going to be faced, like in February and March, for additional staffing because we took this on and didn't leave it with the county?
Okay,
That's additional cost.
Marcia, would you-
There's
anything
nothing to take
additional
on.
on.
We
Yeah.
can't take it on unless we have a licensed person to look at the design and do the inspection.
This Clausen guy is just going to continue what he
Yeah.
has
He's,
been.
he's a.
That's fine.
he's a
I just want to put it out there in
subcontractor
front of
right.
everybody before
He's
we
a service
jump
that
on
we
it.
can hire on a part-time basis, whenever he's needed, that's it.
Well, but I guess I'm confused on, Marcia, is, are you talking one person, or we have a two-person staff is what's authorized? Are you talking one person or two-person at this point?
Well, our staffing.
Our staffing level?
Yeah.
I think they can. But two.
So, just dig in, I think the appetite here is to kind of leave it like it is, but maybe come back and explain it a little cleaner, or verify, or whatever.
I think we need the cost before we go ahead and
So
approve
that
it.
Clausen get an updated next year, what's it gonna be, and just make sure everything.
I would get the costs, but we aren't gonna eat the costs like the county has been doing. Somebody's gonna pay for that, and I don't see any reason why you can't continue doing what you're doing and working with a subcontractor to do the part that they've already been doing for the county.
Right, just
Exactly.
add the cost to it, to the people,
Yep,
for the
so that
permit.
it's all, they don't have to drive to Brainerd Brainerd and,
So the easiest thing, of course, would be just give it to them.
right.
But I just don't think it's good for the citizens, but that's up to, that's your
No.
call, you're the council.
No.
If we're done with that. So you want just Greg Clausen to be asked?
Right, and I look at it, whatever his cost is, that's what it's gonna be, passed on, we're
But
not,
availability also. I mean,
right.
Yeah. I make a motion, we have Mike and Cheryl look into what those costs are, bring them to the December meeting, if possible.
I second it.
Yep,
So just FYI, I got a phone call, on November.
Let's take care of this motion first, Cheryl.
Oh, sorry.
So we got a motion and a second, any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries, go ahead.
So just really quick, I got a call on November 11th from Northland Septic, and I know Manhattan Beach Lodge has been a lot of discussion on that. So we are, at this point, are taking care of, I had called them and asked for pictures, and these are the pictures of what they've done there. So I put this in the file, put them together and put this in the file. They are now meeting state requirements. They have disconnected from the drain field. So at this point, we're good to go. The first two tanks are 2,500, and the last tank, the third tank, is 1,500.
So they're pumping everything.
So, yep, they have to pump. I just thought I'd fill you in that we're good to go until they're ready to make their move to update their system to whatever they want it to look like.
Let me just ask a little question about that. Manhattan Beach Lodge is in Manhattan Beach.
Correct,
The septic is in Cross Lake,
correct,
and that's why we have an interest in it?
correct.
Okay, and that's enough said.
Yep,
Okay.
okay, thanks.
Okay.
If it's okay, I'm gonna finish working.
Yep, thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, before we dive into the detailed budget discussion, let's get TJ taken care of. A couple things we want to talk about is any issues we have with the park department or not. And then before we get to that, we've had quite a few calls recently on the, are we going to plow the trail? Now, the comments I've heard are, well, we don't have a staff person that can do that, we'd have to hire somebody, or we don't have a piece of equipment, what are we gonna do? We've already identified the equipment and the staff person, we have a person on hand, on TJ staff that can do that, and it's possible to reclassify that person so they can be working out of the right job class under the current contract to perform that service, because the individual already has that skill set. So I'm just going to put your overhead up here and what it costs to do that. And my first question for TJ is, did you take into account the snow density? Just messing with you. TJ's got a graphic here that shows snow depth, plow versus sweep, snow blow versus spots out, total hours, and then kind of an estimated cost. I think, last year, the council was interested in saying how much time are we allocating to doing those trails. So he's kept track of that. The only one I don't see on here is, you do have Perkins on there. So go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, so essentially what we did last year, obviously we cleared Daggett Pine Road, and I wanted to do a full in-depth cleaning of the trail, just so we have these numbers as accurately as possible. So when we talk about possibly clearing these other trails, we have some numbers to go by. So you'll see the Daggett Pine numbers are in red just because that is our baseline sample, and we use that to then plug in to the other trails depending on how long the trails actually are. So are the numbers completely accurate? No, because we did not clear any of the other trails last year. This is just based on the Daggett Pine clearing. But you'll see we did separate it out from plow, sweep, snow blow to spot salt. Do we have to do that when we clear the trails? No. Again, we just wanted to do everything that we could to the trails just so we get accurate numbers. Really, if the council, if you guide me in the direction of that, we are going to start clearing more trails, or, you know, we're going to proceed with clearing Daggett Pine and other trails as well. I don't think we should really be plowing, sweeping, snow blowing, and spot salting every single time we clear it, because it just takes way too much time. If we are considering clearing trails, we would open them up, and they are what they are. I did talk to Brad Person last year when we were discussing this topic, and he said we are relieved of any liability on these trails if there's any slips, trips, or falls after we clear them. So those are your numbers. We have had a lot of emails concerning West Shore. I would say if you as the body decide we want to clear the trails, we do none of them or we do all of them. Because if we do one and we don't do the others, we're going to get phone calls as to why we're not doing Manhattan, why we're not doing Perkins, so on and so forth.
Do you
We
feel
ran
that-
into that last year with Daggett Pine.
Do you feel that way if we were to do the Daggett Pine Trail that is connected to the community center? Do you feel the same?
We're still going to get calls, and we're still going to get, you know, citizens saying, well, I have a trail right at the end of my parking or my driveway. It's the same as Daggett Pine, you know, it's providing opportunities for nearby residents of Daggett Pine. Why isn't mine being cleared off too? It's pretty tricky, so that's why I'm saying either you do all or none.
Remember the assisted living too down by Rafferty's, that's the other one that
Correct, yeah. That's the County Road 3 there, the 0.31 miles.
Yeah, so we did get a number of requests. I mean, I took a phone call from Sue Sharon Brock last week. These are two comments. One is an email, one is just a phone call today from Glenn Waller, and another one from Lori Lemke. These folks are over on West Shore, but they're both in support of doing that trail. Here's another one that was forwarded by Mr. Schrupp that he got from Gail Arney. We hope you consider plowing the trails, basically. The other one I've got, I don't know if there's more, I only had a handful. But here's another one, new resident, likes to be outside. Hope you consider as part of the budget, clearing the pathways on West Shore. So there's an interest in doing it, but I'd have to agree with TJ. You know, if you do one of them, then, you know, we're gonna get that call, you know, three hours after it snows, and why didn't you plow my trail?
I would support doing the community center trail on Daggett Pine Road, but I don't think we should do any more. With TJ, with your calculations on cost there, you don't have really equipment wear and tear.
No, if we were to clear all of the trails, we would have to have a designated piece of equipment to clear them. You know, we made do last year with our gator and plow. It's probably pushing its limits if we have a rougher winter. Last winter was pretty mild, if you remember. So if we have quite a bit of snow, it's putting a lot more wear and tear on that gator. So if we're looking at clearing all of our paved trails in the city, we would definitely need some other piece of equipment to clear that.
You got snowplow debris on the trails. I mean, that's heavy stuff. We did it last year because of COVID. This year, that's kind of diminishing. Community center has got a parking lot for people to park. I think it's about 2 miles round trip on that walk.
Yeah, it's 1 mile, a mile one way. And just to remind everyone on the council, I received direction last year to plow this trail because our gym was closed due to COVID. So to provide more opportunities for people to continue to walk, we did open that up for COVID. And we said we would readdress it next year, which is what we're doing now.
So what other opinions do we have on it?
Well, I got half a dozen emails for West Shore Drive. I didn't get anything from anybody else, not Daggett Pine Trail, just West Shore Drive. I got a half a dozen of them. Just yesterday, I guess.
And
Some of them I didn't see until I got here.
I will add to it too, that if the council again wants to clear the trails, we would have to come up with some sort of clearing, a sheet that says, okay, you know, if we get snow, we won't clear the trail up until we get, I don't know what Public Works has, 3 inches? 3 inches is the cutoff. So we would have to have something in writing that explains, okay, this is when we would start clearing it. These are our priorities before we get to those other trails, because we have to clear out our own facility. We have to clear out our security exits. We have to take care of our rink, groom our ski trails. We have a lot of work to do at our own park before we would be able to get to these
What do
trails.
other
Or-
cities do with sidewalks and stuff? Does the city clear them?
Ted,
No.
A lot of cities that I work for, that work for the sport community.
microphone, Ted.
Yeah.
I've worked for 4 communities, and in the 4 different communities, it was the responsibility of the resident to clear in front of their home, in 2 of the cities. The other one, the city did nothing with, and the other one, the city took basically a Bobcat tool carrier, you've seen them with those, and cleaned them. So it's all over what's happened, so. I don't know Marcia, what did you do in your community?
Let's see, sidewalks. I think the only ones that we ever enforced were the I don't know what you'd call them, major sidewalk
The downtown
routes.
area or something?
Yeah. We always cleared the business district. It was just easier, because they would just go shovel it on the street, and then we had to go back anyway, so
You hauled it away, so.
we just blew it out in the street and then hauled it away.
Yeah,
When
if
we
I
did
ever-
the street.
If I remember right, Nisswa, they clear their business district. There are other trails that go throughout the community, they leave alone. Pequot, same way. The only one surrounding community that I can think of is Baxter. And they have obviously a lot more staff, a lot more trails, but they have more staff to take care
And
of
they
those
clean their
trails.
trails?
They plow them. I don't know if they still sweep them or to what extent they clear them, but they open them up.
We're talking about putting more trails in too. Come on, Tom, come on. Oh, jump in.
I'm talking as somebody that, I used to live on West Shore. One problem you're gonna have, and TJ said, it's hard on the equipment. When those plows come down the road, the slush and everything is flying and it lands on the path. So then you're gonna be moving also the snow that's coming off the road. And it is gonna be hard on the equipment. Because when I was trying to get into my driveway on Dewdrop, I mean, after the plow had come by, it's just a drop like that, and it's just ice.
Yeah.
So I agree with Dave, if you want to give people an area to walk, do Daggett Pine, and your reason for that is it's close to the community center, and we can't do every,
Most of it is out of
Road.
the plow path of the plow trucks too. It's back far enough. We're gonna have more trails next year and the year after, and it's gonna be So do we wanna make a motion, or anybody else have an opinion on it?
I don't know, I think a Daggett Pine's a must. I'm thinking County Road 3 by the new senior place, we should keep that open. And there's a lot of interest on West Shore, and I understand what Tom's saying, but, nothing's impossible. And you have the equipment, right? We just, working from your department to TJ's, I'm not sure how
Well, what we're currently doing, that's in the budget, it's been approved already, is to update our skid steer and buy a new snow blower. And then we would take this old skid steer and the old snow blower and it would go over to them. And they would just move it where they need to, utilizing the trailers we currently have. And that skid steer has the snow blower capability to chew through that frozen stuff that Tom was talking about. That's why we bought that snow blower. It's meant for frozen ice and slush.
So I'm just kind of thinking I understand the cost, but we have employees. We got to keep them busy the whole time. So it's not like they're working overtime to do this. The cost is there, the equipment is here. I do agree that, when I talked to John about Manhattan Point, you don't recommend it. You see what's going on there. Perkins is too short.
But how are you gonna deal with the phone calls on those, Dave? Because if West Shore is done, the rest of
Well,
them.
I think last year we allowed TJ and his guys to keep Daggett open. This year we're gonna do a little more. And if we figure it out, next year we can do all of it.
Well,
maybe.
Anchor Point and, man,
I'll take this is an easy call, I think. So I would think that I'd like to see those 3 areas done.
Remember, Anchor Point is attached to the road and it gets cleared with the road, just like
Yeah.
Wilderness. When we wing that off.
Trails is still under Public Works.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about.
I'm talking about trails,
Well, most of it's under TJ.
Yeah.
It's his reading.
but the budget and everything is, trails is under Public Works. So then you would be responsible for the trails and removing the snow. So there'd be really no need to have a second skid steer for trails.
We have the need. Whether the council thinks it or not, we have the need for doing it.
So the other thing we were looking at too, to try to make this work, if you decide to give you the option, is we currently have an individual in the park department that is fully capable and licensed to do these things. And the idea was to, one of the thoughts we had was to push that piece of equipment over there and use it for both. That way the labor stays in the park. But you're right, and we talked about this before, trails is in both. When we're doing a road project, we construct the trail during the road project and it runs out through Public Works. When we maintain it and clean it,
Comes back.
the person cleaning it, if it's one of Ted's guys, staff cleaning it, that day's wages goes into your department. If it's TJ's, it goes into his. So most of the maintenance, depending on what's used, is already going through parks now. But the initial construction gets capped as a project, usually as part of a road project. So that's the biggest difference. So to make it work, you'd have to reclass one of your existing staff to do that. The benefit of doing that is you've got someone that can help out in snow events, but right now we don't. That's what we used to do. We had 1 or 2 people in parks that did that. One of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And we had pulled them out of class and had a similar arrangement so they could operate that equipment. It worked really well for us. So that's the difference. Other than plowing the trails and stuff, is there other stuff in the park you want to talk about, TJ?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want us to deal with this now? Quick? I'd make a motion to take care of West Shore, County Road 3, and Daggett Pine.
I'll second that.
Little discussion, I think the West Shore people, the second year in a row they've asked, and, they're paying taxes, and I think they want to see some return for their.
But I do
tax
have to say that if it's not working, we should stop.
I agree. If you come back,
I mean, if it's, gets out of control.
I plan to continue documenting numbers, how many hours it takes us to clear these trails, so we could give it a shot and come up with another graph for next year, middle of this year, and I can give an update on how it's going.
And I think we should have Public Works clearing the trail, because you guys aren't you're gonna do your own parking lot and your emergency exit doors, that if they have the equipment, they might as well clear the trails.
Well, let's do one motion at a time. So my nickel's worth on that is I disagree with West Shore Drive. I think that's going to open up a can of worms that we're going to be battling with every other sidewalk or anything else close in town, so.
I will say, just if I can, quick, if we decide that we are clearing West Shore, I need to know yesterday, because we would need to stake some of the intersections and some of the boulevards, so we're not digging up big chunks of grass.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna require more equipment, more personnel. It's just gonna balloon into. So we have a motion on the floor to do West Shore, Daggett Pine, and what was the third one,
County
Dave?
Road 3 by the senior place.
County Road 3 by
I
the
think it
senior
goes to
place.
the golf course, kind of, or wraps around
Oh.
on the side street.
So,
I thought we were talking about going from like that senior living to, like Ace Hardware and Reed's.
It's all the same trail.
Yeah, it kind of goes.
I mean, do we have to go the other direction to the golf course?
What ends it, what is the street that runs in front of the new,
Swan. It's Swan to
doesn't it
Pioneer.
end there?
It's Swan to Pioneer, and then it's a paved shoulder.
but who walks to Swan from the senior
There's
center?
many, many, many people with their walkers and their powered carts are using it. In fact, I see 3 today.
Yeah.
I think you're opening up a real can of worms.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
So we have a motion for County Road 3 by the senior folks, West Shore Drive and the Daggett Pine Road in front of the community center. Do we have a second? Yes. We have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Okay,
But we're going to have to rely on staff if West Shore Drive isn't working or County Road 3, we know Daggett Pine does, that we can end it as quick as we started it.
TJ and I will come back to you if we have to.
So,
Jay?
who's staff? Is it Public Works, or is it Parks? What equipment, what do we,
You figure out the manpower.
I mean, we can get it done.
Before all this, right away, send a letter, so everybody knows that at some point in time, they might get cut off if it becomes problematic.
Well, here's the deal too. When Public Works clears off the streets, we have to wait until they're done clearing everything off, or else we're going back and doing it again. So the citizens are gonna have double the amount of,
But the thing of it is, you need to send them a letter letting them know and what the conditions are that you're doing it under. And if there's problems, that the council will take it back under consideration to stop.
would you like Ted and I to come up with some sort of procedure or some sort of guidelines for clearing?
That'd be ideal.
Isn't there a snow plowing policy now for when you
Yes, but this would be a little
plow?
different because if it's my staff, we have other priorities as well. So, letting the citizens know when it's going to be done and what we're doing over at the park and how that follows to clear the trails, I think it's pretty important to let them know.
I guess I'd like to make a motion to put Public Works in charge of clearing the trails.
Okay, I'll second that with a little discussion. I would add to that motion that the Park and Rec Department could do Daggett Pine Road and Public Works to the other 2 roads.
Can I make one comment on the notification of all this stuff? Why don't we just put it on your website? I don't think you need to send a letter to everybody.
Right.
All I'm saying is make sure there's
Yeah.
something out there publicly
Yep.
so they understand
Yeah,
that
good point.
the conditions, yeah.
Yep, so people know. I mean, they just want to know what's going on.
Mike, we could respond to the emails that we received and return the calls to the people that asked, and they will spread the word, I'm sure.
Yep, we could do that, too. We could do both. Put it in both places. Respond to the ones that we have already.
I mean,
and then,
we could put it in the
post
paper, we could put it on the across the communications TV channel.
Is the city council responsible for letting everybody that emailed them too?
Just send them to Shar and TJ, and we can follow up on
Okay,
those.
we got a motion laying here. Motion and a second, so I guess, Marcia, I would ask you, would you amend your motion to put the Park and Rec, or do you disagree with that, on Daggett Pine Road?
Oh, sure, that's fine.
Ted, are you okay with this?
Yeah.
Okay, you okay with this?
So the motion is that the Public Works will do West Shore Drive and County Road 3 from Swan to Pioneer, I believe. And the Park and Rec Department will take care of Daggett Pine Road in front of the community center. It's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
What else you got, TJ?
If anybody has any questions for me regarding my budget, I would answer them. I only have just about 10 minutes left here,
Okay,
so,
we got to jump into the building you're talking about.
sure.
I went over and spent a little time with TJ. He's asking for 75 grand to add a 40 by 50 onto the
40 by
existing
50,
building.
40 by 60, yep.
I think we have to take a long look at this. I think we've got some dilemmas with the Public Works building and not sure who's going to take that over or what we're going to do with the Public Works Department or build a building. I think we got to take a good look at the big picture before we do anything. I think the $75,000 is way low to build that building with heat and insulation and finish. So I think that's the tip of the iceberg on the budget portion of that. But more importantly than that, I think we've got some decisions to make on other needs that we could possibly incorporate together. So I think at this point, it's kind of premature to look at spending any money on any expansion. But that there is a need for it, so we need to look at it closely. That's my feeling.
And regardless of any other comments, how you guys feel, there is a need for more space for parks.
I'm
And
in
how
agreement with
we
Dave.
figure that out,
I'm in agreement with Dave, because I see some other spots that maybe Park and Rec should maybe take a look at dropping some money into. And it is Parks and Recs that I'm talking about, okay? So I'm not going to elaborate on it today because this is going to get long enough as it is. But I agree with Dave. I think we need to hold off on that expenditure.
and I would invite the rest of the council to come take a peek at what we're dealing with. You know, depending on the season, we are playing jigsaw in our shops to try to fit our equipment in there, and some of the equipment is having to be stored at Public Works, and we have to go over there and pick it up and vice versa. So we are dealing with kind of a size issue right now. It's not really much of a wish list item, it's kind of a need, so I don't know how we want to figure this out. We need to do something. Yeah.
I spent a half hour with TJ over there, looked at it, and I agree with him. But all I'm saying is we need to take a close look at what we want to do.
So is the 75 in the levy? No. You're just using park dedication?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'd agree with you because of looking back at the fire hall, which rubs me the wrong way. We did a HS job of estimating what the cost would be on that building, so I have no reason to believe that we probably would be in trouble on that number.
And it's really just shooting from the hip. I didn't get anything firm just because it isn't not coming from the levy. I mean, if it is a little bit more, we do have the park dedication funding available. It's not like we're spending cash that we don't currently have. I tried to go to structural, the place down off 66. We had to pay for some sort of design, and I did not feel comfortable doing that without getting the blessing from the council. So it was just kind of a rough number that Ted and I kind of came up with. So that's where that number came from.
What happens if you put this off a year?
We've been dealing with it since I've been here. We've got one new truck, so we've had to reposition some things and find some new spots. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, but I will just reaffirm that we are in need of some more space.
I think we should certainly look at that. If we don't do it right now,
Well, I think if we had firm numbers, this is coming out of your park dedication funds or assigned funds for the park and rec. So it's not like we couldn't do it next year anyway, even though it isn't in the budget, if you're taking it from assigned funds. You're not budgeting for it, but I don't know what you can do with park dedication funds. Do you have to use it for park improvements? I mean, is there, okay, we got a deal right up there,
Yeah,
I would assume.
Just to your comment on how it's funded, it is in the budget, and we reflect it in the budget as being financed with the park dedication fees. So if we took it out, it wouldn't change the levy any way, shape, or form. All it would do would be reduce the placeholder for that expenditure, along with the related methodology for funding it. So what I've highlighted here, thank you, Shar, brought this to me, was cash payments received, that means park dedication fees for the acquisition and development or improvement of parks, recreation facilities, playgrounds, trails, wetlands, or open spaces based on the approved park systems plan. Cash payments must not be used for ongoing operation and maintenance of parks, recreational facilities, playgrounds, trails, wetlands, or open space. So you could make the case that you're improving your facility by providing buildings to do those activities. You could probably make the argument either way, but I think it's broad enough that you could do that if challenged. So is it your intent to take it out of the budget? Is that what I'm hearing? Or do you want to leave it in there and not worry about it? Or
I would leave that number lay there for now,
so we have visibility to it?
visibility, but then I would like to make a motion to authorize TJ to go out and get a full-blown, not to exceed number on the needs and wants that he has for the building. I've never seen it, so we don't let this just go away. And I should put a date on that by, I mean, how long would it take? You have to, have you talked to somebody at all already, a little bit? Or just from what you know on a building?
Just a little bit, yep.
I don't know, help me here, I don't know how long it takes to get in today's
In
world.
today's world, it's a little tough to get numbers back and get contractors to call you back, but
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a couple months.
Yeah.
To get a good guesstimate at it, you could, I mean, you could get something close, but
yeah, to get a final plan written out would be for sure a couple months, but to get some numbers, we could maybe shoot for a month.
I was gonna say February, March, we could have.
February,
Why don't you
2
make
months
by the end-
to get the full
let's say
plan.
by the end of the first quarter of '22.
So Dave, do you want a design?
Well,
Or just the
I
numbers?
just want to have something so that we can all look at it and make sure that he's covered and we know what everything's going to cost, so it isn't a fire hall deal again,
Or City Hall?
or city hall, right? Because
So
we aren't good at that.
So the full plan is what we're
Yeah.
looking for, okay?
So I second that. You need a second.
all right, now we got a little discussion on that. The only thing I would really caution you on in doing that is that we do have a need, and we got something with Public Works that's gonna be coming up in the near future. And if we take over that whole garage down there and the county moves someplace else, we've got a tremendous amount of space to do a lot of stuff with. Location of it isn't great, but it might be part of the negotiation on, do we have an interest in that Public Works building? And maybe if we didn't and the county stayed there, maybe we'd build a new Public Works someplace over there or something. I mean, there is, I think what you need, TJ, is gonna cost a couple $100,000 easily. And I think if that's the right thing to do, I think it's probably a good thing to do, but it might be able to, if we could incorporate that with Public Works, we could share grapples, we could share bobcats, you know, we'd have everything right there, and we could cut down the expense to the city tremendously and have it all available and right there. So to do what you're gonna do, it's an exercise, go ahead and do it, but I think we should do the long range look. The long, short range, right? I mean, because that building is coming up in a couple of years or something.
Well, they should let us know this next year, I would think.
The lease is coming up, yes. The county is looking at what their future needs are. I can tell you, they just looked at a building that was built down towards the city, another county just built, similar to the size of the one that they have in Brainerd out by the airport. It was a little over $11 million to build that building. They built that building 20 years ago for a little over $2 million. They had sticker shock when they saw that. I don't think, from the feedback I got so far, they have any desire to move. They're gonna stay with us and we'll just be working with them for a longer term. It'll be a new lease.
Well,
Even if that being said is true, Public Works needs a little more room too, so maybe, I just think we need to talk it through and see if we're gonna build a building, maybe it should incorporate parts of both of them.
So as an example, would it mean that if we're going to put a building over there by you, that you have your needs, but maybe your needs and some of his needs, so the building might be a little bigger.
Yeah,
I could read that into it,
Okay.
you know?
I think that's a good idea, Dave. I never gave it a thought, but
I mean, we've got a Bobcat. How old is that Bobcat, Ted?
2007 is our current skid steer.
2007, so it's 13 years old? Mm-hmm. And it's got 1,500 hours on it.
It's got 2580 in it.
2,580 hours on it?
Yes.
I thought I looked at some paperwork that said it was 1566.
That was on the original quote. We put more miles on it since then. He's going off an old hour meter.
because on here it's a 2015, 1,566 hours. That's what I have.
Date of
That's
that
what you
quote
gave
was
me.
like October 8th or something of this year.
The current unit is a 2007, he's got wrong dates on this, is a 2007 277D, and it, when I just looked at the hour meter the other day, it was 2,500 and some odd hours. I know what he's got on there. He's got the wrong information in his quote.
Okay, well,
Well,
regardless.
thank you for sharing the wrong information.
Even that, it's about 200 hours a year you're putting on that Bobcat.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And 200 hours a year, you know, is on a 2,000-hour year, that machine could be shared between the two. So maybe the Bobcat would go into the, you know, whatever. I'm not trying to design it, but there could be a little play back and forth. But regardless of what it is, I think before we jump to any conclusions and spend any significant money, we should look into
Well,
it.
yeah, but I think he needs to probably give him some liberty on some funds to do this in case you need it, but get some sort of design, and then you can try to figure out with Ted, or maybe we just tell you to, you have your needs, but we want it a little bigger. I don't know, we gotta start looking at something, otherwise it'll just,
I think we should get something from the county saying you're in or you're out.
they can ask.
Are you authorizing spending money for a design?
Well,
I
I
mean, is
don't
that
know.
part of that motion?
Yeah, I don't know how much we should go, $2,000, I don't know, $1,000?
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
I don't know.
Is it a pole building or a stick built? I don't know.
Well, I would think $2,000 would probably get what you need,
It should, yeah.
if you wanted to do that. I just don't know that it's the smartest thing to
further,
do
though.
this
No
early,
further.
but.
But I'm kind of starting to agree with Dave that we should find out what the county's going to do and go from there. If they're going to stay in that building, I thought the whole thing is that it's not big enough anymore.
Well, it's not for both of them. Yeah.
No, but I mean, the county and the city are in it together, and if they're going to they're going to extend their lease with us, my understanding was that it wasn't big enough for both of you.
We have a desire to add more space to the back of the building because it is tight in there when we have all the plows and wings on. So that's 6 months of the year, it takes two people to back a truck out because the one is watching the other vehicle behind you can't see. So yes, we do have a desire to add another addition onto the building. And that's the county and the city would like to do that. To add more room for the park department, that all could be planned in and taken care of.
See, I'm just thinking that maybe we're putting the cart before the horse, getting this estimate, if we don't know what the county's going to do. And if we know what the county's going to do for sure.
So when do they have to
What?
commit by on that, Ted? I mean, you gotta,
We have a few years yet on the contract. We have a few more years on that.
I thought the lease was up in January.
No. It's another
April
2023 is what it is.
2023.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just that it's coming, so we wanted to start the discussion, is what it was. So far, the only discussion is they mentioned it to me, that their internal was talking amongst themselves. What do they want to do? So they went out and they found a shop that had been built, and they got an estimate from that building, similar size, and it was $11 million. They got a sticker shock. And right away, as they looked at me and said, I don't think we're going to go anywhere. We'd rather put a couple $1 million into the existing building with you, and we'd be perfectly fine and comfortable.
Maybe we don't want to do that and we want to not renew the lease.
Well, and then we have to decide to. Yes, go ahead, sir.
That'd be a bad choice. And the reason for that is we all like plowed roads, and we like the county roads plowed too. Right now, the roads that are in Cross Lake get plowed out of Cross Lake, and we get done first. And they don't come out of Brainerd to come up here, and at the end of the route, we're at the beginning of the route. And so I think you may have commented on that.
But you
and
know,
that's a really good
then
deal.
they'll be complaining about the roads and they'll leave us alone about the trails.
I don't think we're saying the county shouldn't be here.
No,
but-
there's
But
a-
maybe the county's gonna say there's not room in that building for us. You know, maybe that's the opportunity to,
Well, then we
build it.
could sell it to them, we could sell it to them under the terms of the lease and put up our new building. I mean, there's all kinds of options.
That's what
Right
I'm
now,
saying.
they're being talked about, and have not been any decisions
well,
made.
but we should put our input into it too. There should be a two-way conversation with it. Right now, it's all
No
up to
one's
the
saying it
county.
isn't two-way. Ted's had conversations with it. We're waiting for them to find out what they need. Ted's already identified his space needs.
Well, maybe
So-
we should add to that plate what our needs are gonna be too, and blend them and see where we're at, that's all.
Yep.
And you asked the desire to be involved in the discussions, and we got to the sitting down with them. So far, they haven't invited us to sit down with them.
Yeah.
And at that time, I will bring you.
Yeah, but I mean, you
Yeah,
know,
so the point is, it's in process, and there's time to finish that discussion, so.
So,
Okay,
so
I-
most of the time when you have an agreement like this, there's some date that's a drop dead date where people have to notify you of their intentions.
Yep,
Can we find out what that is?
yes.
Also, I would say we put a hold on $2,000 expenditure until we have better idea.
Yeah.
well, let's let the
Honestly, I
motion,
do.
we got a motion and a second on that. Should we vote on it, or do you wanna
Yeah, no,
withdraw it?
let's vote on it. I think.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second to spend $2,000 and drop a plan concept for the new Park and Rec building. All in favor for that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Motion fails, 3-2. Okay, so, and let's try to put it on the front burner. We need to discuss it. You know, there is a need, so. Okay. Tom?
Chip had a thought. Simonson does these
Right.
things for free. You know, you
Well-
could get a general idea.
They don't do it for free, but the cost is, you know.
But what I want to caution you guys on is, I really question using park dedication fees on a maintenance garage. I was here when we put it in. It's a very controversial way of getting funding. And, you know, I know there's some for the pavilion in the budget and some for the warming house. Those are facilities that people go in and use. You know, if you're a developer and you're gonna pay, I'm just pulling a number, $50,000 in park dedication fees, and you find out they're using it to build a maintenance garage, I don't wanna see park dedication fees, challenged. And I think using it, and I don't mean to rain on TJ's parade, because I'm on PAL and I'm trying to do everything I can for the park. But I really question, and even the sheet that Mike had up here said, you do not use that for, maintenance. And,
Ongoing maintenance.
well, ongoing maintenance. I just really caution you on using that for a maintenance garage, because if the wrong person with some money behind them gets wind of how we're using it, in the past, we've bought land, we've, used it on trails, things like that. But to build a maintenance garage, I think you're asking for somebody to challenge you at some point.
Point well taken. Thank you, Tom.
So, to that end, would it put your mind at comfort if we got an opinion on that?
Well,
Yeah, legal opinion.
yeah, you can, but I don't think we're doing much with that particular thing right now until we come up with a bigger plan. So Simonson does do plans. They usually charge $65 an hour, and if you buy the materials from them, they will reimburse you. So that's how they work. It's not free, but it is certainly a good way to do it. So, and that's what I think you guys should pursue that.
I agree.
But they're not gonna pursue it because we just denied
Well,
your
sometimes,
motion.
some
But
places,
sometimes,
yeah.
you know.
That's how they work.
Okay,
Okay, so we done with parks?
Yep.
Okay, so whenever you do a budget, you know, the minute you put something out there, it changes. The good news is it changed the right way for us. So before we get into all this detailed budget, just some general comments. You know, I've got comments from a number of you that we've either already talked about, or have implemented in this latest version. So there really isn't anything new in here. The things that are new is how I accounted for, tried to track the grant funds, and I've talked to some of you about that. You know, we said, okay, we've got about $125,000 of money under the rescue plan, the ARPA money. Depending on what we end up doing with it, if we in fact spend it on an allowable project this year, we'll recognize it as revenue this year. If we don't spend it on a project this year, we'll be required to defer it into next year. So what I've reflected in the budget is that it's November. We're probably not going to spend that money till next year. So I've shown it as grant proceeds and ARPA money in the general fund, and made the assumption that we're going to, at some point, run the larger project in the sewer fund for the 66 project. And then we'll take that grant money and then just transfer it over to the sewer fund and run the expenditures out of the project fund over there. So that's reflected in the budget. The other thing that happens is when we last talked about the budget is I was waiting for the state and the county to give us their updated numbers. And if you remember, on page 9 of this document, I had calculated a estimated tax rate of about 28.1%. Yesterday afternoon, I got the updated tax rate from the county. While it's dated a print date of November 4th, we didn't actually get it by email until yesterday. With our current year levy request, our tax rate is actually 27.456. So 28.1 minus 27.5. I was a little too high, but not much. And as we all know and talked before, those are all relative rates, meaning it's based on your levy request divided by the taxable tax capacity. That's how you get your rate. And some people like to use it as a tool and say, hey, I got the lowest rate, I must have done a good job. But understand it's based on your taxable value, and taxable values are different. The other thing we need to be aware of when we're comparing rates, we also like to look at how do we stack up with other communities. If you turn that page over, you don't have this, so sorry about that. I just got it. I'll turn my page over. The city rates over here on the left, these are the city tax rates in the county, the city only, and they're kind of all over the place. One thing you should note is all of these other communities, with probably the exception of Manhattan Beach, get significant local government aid, right? We don't get any. So if you're Brainerd and you get, $500,000 of local government aid, or Baxter, that you don't have to levy for, that has a big impact on your tax rate, or it can. So just understand that and know that every community is a little different, but Cross Lake does not get any local government aid to offset any levy dollars. The danger in using state aid to offset levy dollars is if you don't get state aid that year, then you either can't make that expenditure or you have to find another way to fund those things. The other questions I get quite often on this same topic relate to how do we compare to other counties? And this came out Monday. I just filtered it. When I look at county levies, I just picked our, counties around us. The state average for a county is 3.7%. Crow Wing County is a little higher than that. 4.3. So our county is a little higher, and there's a whole bunch of things that go into that. When I look at cities within our county, as I mentioned, a lot of them get local government aid. We do not. And you see the levy dollars are all over the place. They're as low as 21,000 and as high as 7.2 million, and everywhere in between. The state average on a preliminary levy for all cities was 6.6%. Crow Wing County was 8.4 for the cities within our county. Cross Lake, our levy actually went down from last year, our proposed levy. The other things that impact our tax rate locally, our total tax rate, what we pay, is the school district rate. Now, these are the school districts that have taxing authority within our city. And every school is different. Obviously, Brainerd is the largest, has the largest impact. And statewide school districts that have levies was 4.6%. Those that are in our taxing area are 5.6. So in all cases, we're kind of below those averages. But all of those numbers, when you add them up together, and you want to look at, when you write your check to pay your taxes in May and October, these are the rates you're looking at right here that are applied to your market value. So if you're in the Pequot School District, that tax rate is 70.432. If you're in District 182, it's Crosby, you're 72,837. If you're in Cross Lake, or Pequot Lakes, it's a little lower. So that's the net tax capacity rate that gets applied to your taxes, and that's all based on the taxable market value of the property times its classification. So it's not safe to draw a conclusion to say we did a good job based on our tax rate. There's a lot of things that go into it, and everyone's situation is different. The last one I have are townships. Again, every township is different. The statewide total is 2.7. We're seeing 3.3 in our area. That was all in the league bulletin from Monday. So if you want that or any questions, I can try to answer them. On that, when I look at our current model, there's a number of things we need to talk about. The budget revisions from the last meeting, I got a number of comments from people on them. And the big picture items, I think we're all in agreement on. Where we get into the meat of the discussion is, should I adjust this revenue or expense up by this amount and change my levy for that amount or by that dollar? All of that stuff, they're all good questions, but they really don't end up having much of an impact when we look at the big picture. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I do encourage you to come in, talk about it, and all that kind of stuff. So I think with that, the first few pages of this document talks about what changed from our last budget meeting. Remember, we took out the land purchase, those kinds of things, adjusted the levy for it. Those are all represented on pages 2 through 4 of this document. The next item, we just talked about this sheet, which we just updated. This is last year, okay? This was our final rate from the process we did when we did this last year. We were at 30.36%. And the most current rate I have for the year we're going into was the 27.5, which is a reduction in rate of 2.9%. That can be good or bad, whichever position you support and the facts behind it. When we look at how we've done previously, this would be an updated page 8 of your document. Here's our 27.46%. I just wanted to show or try to understand what's happening with changes in how we levy. So what I try to figure out is, are the changes in levy due to changes in taxable tax capacity, or is it due to changes in levy? For us this year, it's really not much of a difference. You could make the case either way because our levy actually went down. Had we left our rate the same as last year, we would have generated additional funds without a change in rate. Now again, wherever your position is, if you're more focused on rate or if you're more focused on percent of change or dollars, it really doesn't matter. You still have to do what's right for your particular position. It's just additional information, food for thought. So where we're at with the levy right now is we're right here at $4,467,112. That generates a tax rate under the current process of 27.46. It should not get any higher than that at the local level. It can only go down because at this point you can't raise your levy, your preliminary levy, you can only lower it. So when I look at, and I'm going to skip over to page 9 of your document, and I can talk a little bit about that. So what I've done is I've ran all of these changes through this document from our last meeting. And one of the things we spent a lot of time on is how we're going to pay for the projects we're proposing to do. One of the questions that came up at our last council meeting was, well, can I spend those federal funds we got from the American Rescue Plan and Recovery Act, the ARPA funds, can I spend those on the clarifiers? I have not found anything that says we can't spend it on that because it's clean water related, because it's discharging into the sewer.
I can bring it up. We can spend it on the clarifiers. We can.
And I've talked with Tim Hool at the county and Tim Bray at the county to see what he's looking at. And I talked with our engineer, and everyone's in agreement. While it doesn't specifically call it out, it talks about water and wastewater infrastructure projects. When you look at the final interim rule, it gets really specific in that section, and it refers back to the projects eligible under the Clean Water Act, and they give communities broad discretion on what they can spend that at. So the good news is we can spend it on, everything I've seen says we can spend it on the clarifiers, or we can spend it on the other project if we go forward. So the challenge is it doesn't really change the overall picture if we spend it on clarifiers versus the 66 project. It does make a difference if we decide not to do one of those projects. It changes how we fund the rest of it. So for example, if you get to the point and you come in and say, well, I don't want to do the 66 project, and it doesn't go through, then you've got that money, you can go ahead and spend it on earmark it for the clarifiers and still be fine. You just have a lower bond issue on it. That's to be determined, yes.
Well, I guess the clarifiers, we've approved the bid, we're moving forward with it, so I don't know why the city council wouldn't approve those ARP funds for the clarifier.
Again, it really, I think it's premature to make that decision right now for two reasons. One is we haven't had any expenditures on it, and we're not quite through the process with the roads, and we're not quite through the process with getting bids for the 66 project. And that's exactly why I came to you at the last council meeting and said, look, we have some decisions to make yet. we'll be doing a bond issue at some point where it's more efficient to issue one bond. We have the ability to cash flow this process into next year, so we can make that decision and plan accordingly. And we also passed a resolution to say, hey, we're not sure how we're going to finance the rest of the things we've got going on, but we reserved our ability to issue bonds to reimburse ourselves. So the way that I reflected that dilemma in the budget was I put it right here, and I said, between the $315,000 and the $249,077 of the ARPA funds we expect to get, I'm reflecting this as we're recognizing all of that in 2022, regardless of what project we spend it on, okay? And then I said, it's likely we'll run the project out of the sewer fund or a sub-fund of it. So we'll take that money and we'll put it over here and we'll spend it, include it in there. So it's all 100% accounted for. I mean, that's really how you have to do it in governmental accounting. It's a lot easier to defer things and not intermingle them with your net assets in the sewer fund. If you can separately identify those funds and show clear recognition in accordance with current standards, it's very easy just to transfer those out. You're just moving cash from one fund to the other to pay for it. It's got nothing to do with which project you're using it for, in any case. But it also gives you the ability to say, look, I'm going to issue bonds to pay for the unfunded portion of this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and issue bonds for the road project because I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet as a council. Those decisions haven't been made. The only decisions that have been made are to go forward and get the projects finished and bid so we know what they cost. We haven't decided what level of funding we're going to bond for. So with that said, we can change the model either way. It's got no impact on your levy, with the exception of this number right here. And we'll talk about fund balances and how this impacts assignments in a minute here. What we're looking at doing is when we're doing the road project, we have to have a way to pay for it. In this model, which is in your packet, it shows that this yellow number, we're going to have some extra funds if we bond for it. So it really doesn't matter if you put it in your budget and bond for it and then change your mind and you don't. It just comes out. But what I wanted to illustrate for you, what happens if we say, you know what, we're going to change this a little bit and we're not going to bond for the road projects at all. We're going to use existing fund balance and cash. And I'll explain how that looks here. So if you do that, and you say, I'm not going to issue $706,100 of bonds for the current plan for the 2022 road projects, I now have a shortfall in my plan. I have to come up with another $265,000 of our own funds to make that work, or we have to have some level of funding. No, the reason this is important is because a lot of the questions I've received lately and the things that you're hearing in the news are, what do we do about inflation? What do we do about availability of projects? How much are these going, of parts? How much are these going to cost? Just for a reference point, if you look back to some of the information that's been out more recently, in the budgeting documents that the league puts out, if you take the consumer price index for the Midwest urban region, which we're in, and you look back between April 20th, and they use a period of April to April. If you look at April 2020 to April 2021, that change was 4.9% above the previous year. Everything we're seeing in the news now, including the Social Security adjustment, is showing that to be a couple percentage points or more higher than that. The point is, we just don't know what that's going to be. And so when we look at a budget, we try to do our best guess of what that's going to be, knowing full well it's probably going to be higher than that. By how much, we just don't know. So the point I'm trying to make is no matter what is decided, under which projects you do have flexibility. And the flexibility is in what level of debt financing you're comfortable in issuing and understanding its related impact. One of the questions I got from, when we were talking about this last August, what does our outstanding debt look like? And I realize this is small, it's in your packet, but so this is just a bunch of numbers, unless you understand what they mean. So instead of looking at the numbers, I'm going to put up a picture to show this graphically. And the point I want to make is, if I take that picture and I look at, debt is debt. You have to pay it back no matter what, from whatever source, whether it's current funds, bond levy, or whatever. So what I did is I went back to 2008, and starting here, I said, what does our levy look like? What did it look like? And I ran it out to 2021. Right here, and said, now we've got two more bond issues. We've got the building that we're paying for, and we've got fire apparatus. So our levy changed between 2022 and 2021. So to make our budget work, here's where our debt levy is right now. And then just to get a placeholder, because at the beginning when I did this, we were looking at $1 million for biosolids or whatever. I just said, what would happen if we issued if our debt levy went up $500,000 to service that debt? Now, realistically, at the projects we're looking at, an annual payment would be somewhere around that $300, $350 range at today's rates. If we added $500,000 to our levy and ran that out to the end, it'd look something like that. It'd be this top line. We'd see a very large spike in 23 and 24 for the next 2 years, because right now we're right here and we still have outstanding bond issues. There's a couple bonds that get paid off over the next 2 years that on the blue line, if we did nothing, would drop it down to here. So that's why the gap gets bigger down here and it's very large up here. So just be aware, and we've talked about this for a couple years now, when we're looking at 2021 to 2024, we're looking at some changes. There's opportunities for you to plan for that. The whole idea, in an ideal world, your debt levy would look something like this. It'd be relatively flat, and you could manage it with the combination of cash, current year levy, and new bonds as you did projects. Some years you would do cash, some years you wouldn't do a project, you'd still have a levy for it. And then the years that you did projects, you'd issue bonds to finance the difference. So we talked about that a lot of different times. None of this impacts the levy for this year. It's information that we need to be thinking about going into the future. So at this point, the budget that you have in front of you incorporates the changes we've talked about. I'm sure there's other things in it that can be improved, tweaked, whatever. but it doesn't really change the overall levy.
Okay,
On it.
I have some questions. Nice charts.
I'm shocked. Your questions are?
You say that every year, I don't know why you're shocked. So, or was that
I'm being
tongue-in-cheek?
facetious.
Okay. I want to talk about assigned balances. There's-
We're on,
I don't quite understand. I asked you to have the assigned balance sheet like you gave us in August, but you chose not to do that and said, look at the
well,
balance
I
sheet.
didn't choose not to do that. I provided it
Well, okay.
on the balance sheet.
So my first question is on roads, the assigned balance.
Okay, hang on a second. We're still on items 3 and 4, and if we're done with the budget discussion and update on items 3 and bonding for levy projects, we'll move on to 5. But I mean, I don't want to
I
keep
don't know,
bouncing around.
page 3 and 4?
No, we have an agenda.
Oh, I'm going to ask a question about assigned balances because I think that's important to our budgeting process. In October, we had in the assigned balance for roads, $157,000. Can you explain that?
Yes, I can, when we get to item 5.
Well,
Can I just go back? We're jumping ahead, and I have answers for your questions.
well, we've been here an hour and a half and we haven't started really on the budget. Talking about expenditures of what we want to do and assigned balances. I mean, we've been talking about budget.
So what's your
but-
question?
Well, go ahead.
Is the council comfortable with the levy as it stands today in this model?
Are we sitting at 27.465?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're not going to discuss any of the budget before us? We're just going to go ahead with the 27.46?
I'll just repeat this again. I know there's some adjustments that maybe somebody wants to make, but the last couple of years, we've made adjustments upwards of $1 million to deplete our cash. And I see at some point if we're off a few $1,000s and it leaves we miss an estimate, which we have missed. Hopefully it's a positive miss for us where we have some extra cash. I'd like to see no time that we're digging into our cash. We did it this year, and I voted for this with the streetlights. It was a good thing to do, but that wasn't in the budget. So we go
Okay.
ahead and we spend things that aren't in there. Now I don't want to nitpick over somebody's guess. If it's $2,000, I think it should be 1,000. In the big picture, I don't want our services to go this way. I
Okay,
don't want to come up short either.
but you don't want to look at assigned balances, fund balances? You don't want to look at
When we're
that?
done with this, I'd be glad to try to understand what you're
Sure.
upset
So,
with,
so to that end, so we can get back on track here, I do want to address some of the questions I've received. Some of them have already been answered, some of them have not. Some of them relate to some of the details in the budget. One of the questions I got was cost of living adjustments. We talked about COLAs, 4.9 versus what they are now. We've talked about, one of the questions was, do we have spare parts to function? Have we accounted for inflation? We touched a little bit on that. How are we spending the phone company funds? We'll get to that in a few minutes. One of the things we're running into, and we're seeing this not only in Ted's department, but we ordered a computer to replace Chip's computer back in the first part of July. We just got it last week. So we're getting components for things that break or that need to be replaced. The problem is it's just taking longer to get things that normally would take just a few days, and costs are higher. We touched a little bit about what are we doing with the building we share with the county. And remember, it is our building, we lease it to them for a fee. Building maintenance. I know, Dave, this was a hot topic for you early on. We're putting these buildings up. You were looking at what's it going to cost to get a maintenance agreement. One of the things Ted has been talking to the county on is the county has a program that several communities use for their buildings or shared facilities where the county does the maintenance, and we pay the county to do that, whether it's a furnace, changing a filter in a furnace, or painting the ceiling, or whatever it is. So there is a program available. I don't know what you got, if you ever came out with a proposal for that. It just kind of died. Right now, one of the questions was, do we know what's in every building, and what are we doing about making sure the buildings that are up are being maintained? It's kind of as needed right now, and it's in the budget. We don't have a formal plan that says on this date at this time, we go to this building and check to see that all the windows work or the roof is fine. It's pretty much on a as-needed basis. We also talked about at our last council meeting, should we be dipping into those funds for the phone company? They're sitting at about 2.2 million today. We shared at that time what we spent them on. We brought in the individual from the 4M fund that says, there are some longer term opportunities if you're interested in it. If you want to tie those funds up, let us know. When we look at operating budgets, there's comments all over them. One of the questions I got was sewer increase fees. Usually in August, the Public Works Commission talks about that. There didn't seem to be like a big push to raise the fees. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Ted?
We brought it to the council, we never got feedback what they wanted me to do, where they wanted me to go, how high do you want it?
Yeah, just for a reference point, we're at $52 now. If you raised it $1, that'd be just under 2%. So basically every dollar you raise for it is about $6,000 of additional revenue.
How much is a pump, Ted, for your system? If you have to go up, a brand-new pump, you got to put one in.
10 grand.
10 grand.
Yeah,
So if we went up 2%, that would cover a pump.
that would cover a pump, yeah.
Okay, just so I can correlate.
Yep.
We have 36 pumps.
Yeah, and right now, the way that it works, if we get connection charges, the theory is we're not generating enough in operations to replace that pump in the first place. So anything we're using to do those replacements are either coming in through new connection charges or part of replacements as new projects. So that's food for thought. Wages is always a hot topic. Right now, we're right in the middle of discussing that with the labor contract, so that'll come at a later date. I had a question on audit and accounting. This came from Tom. Reduce it to 28,000. The audit letter said it was 26,750. What was not taken into account in that comment was the audit letter also, the auditors charge us a 5% technology fee to cover their own technology. And we also have our OPEB disclosure process in that line item. So when I add the technology fee and the OPEB disclosures that we approved with Hildy Inc., that's now USI Consulting, that total comes to $31,988 versus a budget of $32,000. And then there was a bunch of other comments on donations, operating transfers. We talked about that with the ARPA money and the soil and water conservation money. And then just a lot of other questions on, reducing things of smaller amounts. But we weren't changing things for things that we overspent this year. So we should come out pretty close. We talked a little bit about the skid steer in Public Works, computer equipment, questioning computer equipment. Why can't we use the reserve for it or the assignment? What we try to do with that is we try to budget forward so that when we replace our server in a couple, 3 years, we've got the funds set aside to do that and we don't impact the levy. A little bit what we talked about before, trying to have that curve smooth instead of like a mountain and a valley. Then we talked about the park dedication fees, what they can be used for, what they can't be used for. Some questions on silver sneakers and silver and fit. Now remember, the silver and fit program changed, the eligibility for it changed. So, you know, we really need to take both of those programs into effect, and there's about a net change of about $6,000, no levy impact. Then we talked about a lot of other things too. What are we comparing to against wages? Striping, one of the things that we're finding is if we do less road projects, our striping costs go up.
And we have to do the downtown.
And we have the downtown area to do this year. So, good question. And there's hopefully hopefully we've put enough in there to cover that. So, all depends on how much paint it takes. So, just a lot of stuff like that. So, let's go into fund balance, since that seems to be the hot topic. Every month on the balance sheet, you're presented, you don't have the balance sheet in front of you, you're presented the summary level data of what those cumulative fund balances are. There was a lot of discussion earlier in the year, you know, before August of 2021, the fund balances were just kind of all lumped in one number on the balance sheet. And when we got to the end of the year on the audit, you know, we made sure we sorted those out and figured out what they should be and monitored them. Because we're watching things a lot closer today, we want to know how those are moving, what makes them up, what's in them. Now, my intent is not to get down to the transaction level. If you're interested in that, then schedule some time with me and we can spend some quality time doing bookkeeping. So what I do on a monthly basis is I'm going to start with, I always start with the audited numbers.
But before you start that, can you just answer that one question about the 157,000 in road construction that you reduced in October?
The 150.
The assigned balances, what
Yes.
is that? I don't recall.
That was the payment for the settlement on Perkins Road, and there were a couple other smaller things in there. That's where the council we talked about taking it out of.
Okay, so this was the Perkins payment came out of there?
Yes.
Okay, because I didn't see anything in the list of bills or anything, and for the life of me, I couldn't think of what we spent $157,000 on, so you can understand the question is because there was nothing there.
Well, it was already approved by the council.
Yeah,
previously.
about 2 months ago or
Yep.
something like
And
that,
so the
3
payment
months
was
ago.
made in early November or October. I'm not sure when the payment.
But there was nothing in the bill payments, and it showed up on here.
Well, there didn't need to be. It was already approved.
I know, but wouldn't you show it on the list of bills and paid? That's how you do the other ones. You have paid on them.
No, and that could have
That's the
been.
reason. So you've explained it.
that's fine.
Thank you very
Yep.
much. Appreciate
You
it.
know, and when you have questions like that, just stop in and ask them. I mean, we're here every day. So what I've done with this is if you look at the audit report, you know, you'll see this column of numbers right here. And what we've done since is we've created all of these categories in here to track those things. And so each month, these are the numbers that show up on the balance sheet. So these are the numbers that are in, they'll be on the next page that are in August, at the end of August. We summarize the activity and we make it through a journal entry. Now some funds like debt service only have one activity in them called debt service. So I retooled the general ledger so everything closes into the right fund balance. So I don't have to make a journal entry for it. Where it gets interesting is when you have the sewer fund down here on the bottom, where we've been tracking the debt in a separate fund in the sewer fund, but we're tracking the related assets it created in another fund. So to get the full picture of where the sewer fund is sitting, we have to look at what's called the net asset position, net of debt. If I take that, carry that all the way over to August, to November, or I'm sorry, October, our unrestricted position is still in a deficit. I don't expect that to change. That just means we're not funding our depreciation, and we're funding our debt, but we're not funding our capital items. We're only trying to cover our operating costs. So if you want to see all the detail in here, then we really need to get down to the transaction level. Here's the 157,000 you're referring to. One of the other things we have to be careful of too is when we're putting things through that fund balance, we can't really create any artificial deficits in those. We had a couple things that did that, so we'll need to correct that at some point. But we got another month or so to talk about that. So what level of detail
So
do
these
you want?
balances have been levied for, and they're assigned to that fund, like the road construction fund?
So what we did, just to follow up on that, what we did is we said, we're going to put our budget in there because we're saying we're going to divvy up our levy in this manner. We're also trying to reflect that we made changes to that levy through budget amendments we did in July. So I've reflected those in here. I've reflected our budget amendments, and then the items we've used to move for the construction project.
So how did we get 170,000 in police equipment?
How did we get
A
it?
fund balance of 170,000?
Well, we levy for it.
Okay.
We included it in our levy.
So we have 170,885.70 that we have levied for police equipment, and now in 2022, we're going to levy another 66,000 for police equipment.
That's correct.
It's not right. Well, it's right, but it's not right to me. It's not right that we go levy 66,000 more when we got $170,000 that we've already levied and is sitting there assigned for police equipment. And now we're going to come along and put another 66,000 in the levy for police equipment. I don't know. I, as a taxpayer and as a council person, I don't think that's right.
Well, then let's talk about that. So I'm going to start by getting you back into the weeds on page, let me find it here.
You agree that that's what it is, that we've
Let's go
already
to-
levied $170,000 that's just sitting there, and now we're going to go ahead and levy another $66,000 in 2022. We should be using that assigned fund balance and not levy the $66,000.
We're actually levying more than that for police equipment. Turn to page 18 of your packet.
Well, I just remember that was police cars or police vehicle. I'd grab 66,000. It might be
Sure. So what we do
different.
is we try to do our best job and estimate what those items are going to cost. And what we also do is we recognize that we're replacing squad vehicles on a rotation. And we also recognize that we're trying to have a smooth, even levy process so that we are planning for the future. So we don't want to levy 50,000, just to make the math easy for everyone. If a squad car costs $50,000, we don't want to levy $50,000 every year and then in the year that we replace two, levy 100 and have that, try to have that debate and decide whether or not we need a squad car. We really don't want to have the debate every year, what, do we need to replace the equipment or not? So what the city decided to do was let's put that on an equipment rotation. Let's figure out what it costs to, a squad car costs. Let's map out what year we have to buy two squad and flip them, or whatever those equipment needs are. And let's amortize that balance backwards and forward So when we get to the year that we have to purchase 2 vehicles, the funds are there to do it, and we're not debating whether or not we need a squad car.
Well, that's more than 2 vehicles, and we're already budgeting $66,000 in 2022. I don't think that is right. And I would like to hear from other councilmen that you think it's okay, we have $170,000 we've already levied for, is sitting there for police equipment, and we're going to turn around and we're going to levy another $66,000 for police vehicles in 2022. Explain to me that that's okay with you.
Where did the 170 that's carried over come from?
Levy,
Yeah, but I mean, just surplus?
yeah.
No, it
They
came,
said
it came from levy dollars, it came from donation dollars for funds that we run through there.
Is that all over forfeiture donation?
No. No, that's separate. We still have about $30,000 left, about $30,000 left to go on the police budget. We're trying to figure out what to do with the cameras, body cameras we've talked about. So in our total levy, I mean, I look at it all in total to see where we're spending those funds. So if you don't want a levy for squad cars and you want to do it in a different fashion, then you need to let me know as a council.
I'm not saying I don't want to levy for them. I'm saying we have $170,000 sitting there right now. If that was $60,000, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But it's $170,000. We need to take a look at that. Do you want to explain to the taxpayer why you levied another $66,000 when you have $170,000 sitting there that you've already taxed them for, levied?
Let me ask you a question. Do you like your levy to be flat, smooth, and predictable, or do you like it to be all over the place?
I want to follow the budget.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, there's $70,000 that's in discussion.
170.
170, thank you. How much of that is sitting there for the 5th squad car?
Nothing, right? Because the 66 is what we're levying for that new squad car. That's what Marcia's saying, that's why.
We have 66,000 in the 2022 budget,
Yeah.
and we have another 170,000 sitting there. How many squad cars are you going to buy?
That's
So,
what- yeah.
when I look at the police equipment budget, as of the end of October, now remember, fund balance is not cash, it's fund balance. Assigned for police equipment, we've got $125,481.01. We have 30,000, now this includes squad cars, left to go on that. So we've got, the difference, and then we're planning to put another 87 in there. So it's not, I don't know where you're getting the 100, I'd have to look, I don't understand your 170.
I don't see the 170. What page are you on? So I can get to the same page. Oh, right here.
Okay, so I don't think you clearly understand the document. So let's talk about that for a second. So now this first column is where the end of the year was. So we started out with $70,000 in that account. We said our original budget for the police equipment,
We
including
can't see
squad.
it, Mike. Nope.
Oh, I didn't have it under the right spot, did I?
No.
Okay, I'll make it bigger. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so at the beginning of the year, it's really clear for me because I'm just looking at the paper. The beginning of the year, we had 70,178.78 left over from all prior years. We said we need a budget, and this is on page 18 of your document. It's the bottom number in the first column, $112,835 of levy items, including squad cars. Then we said we made $12,128 of budget amendments. Right? So if I do the math, 70 plus 112 minus 12 is $171,000. That's how much we have available if everybody pays their taxes. Then what we do is we start spending our budget.
So that fund goes into like May. I'm just using, I'm not sure of the date. That 170,000 goes until May. Has to last us until May
That has to last us till December 31st
of this year.
of this year.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to do is say, how much do we have available to spend for police equipment in our budget? So I have my beginning assignment, I have what we levied, I have whatever budget amendments were, and we have a total of what we're going to spend through the year.
Can you put up the expense page?
Yep.
That you were talking about, showing what we've spent so far this year?
Yep, I will do that. And so I'm just trying to answer your question on the 170, because what you're missing is you're not taking into account the dollars you've already spent this year, okay? So then what I do is I look at, this is the page.
What page is that?
It's page 18.
That's where I'm at.
That was your budget for the year, the whole year. Is everyone in agreement on that? Marcia?
So you have, on your balance sheet, you have 100. On your balance sheet, you have 125,000.
Correct.
So you still have 125,000.
And we have 30,000 left to go.
Okay, that gets you down to 95.
Yep. So what's your
That's
question?
got to be a couple squad cars.
Is that taking into account the 20,000 that was taken out also?
Yes.
Yes, the budget.
And so again, what we're trying to do is when we get to the end of the year, whatever that number is, now if we get this, if this purchase is delayed to a future year, we're not just going to forget about it. I'll come back and say, the reason we have a variance there is because we didn't spend it. Can we roll it over because we still have the need? It's a timing issue. We would ask you to increase the 87 by the amount we didn't spend and roll it forward. And it just keeps going.
So the amount you have not spent yet is $29,700.
As of the 31st of October, yes.
Correct.
But the fund balance is 125.
We're
On the
talking-
balance sheet, it's 125.
That's
With
correct,
the money carried over from the year before.
yeah. And so the reason it's 125 is because we haven't spent the 29, and you'd add the 87 to it if you approve this budget without any further amendments, and then you'd start spending the 87, and then when you get to your year where you buy 2 cars, the funding's there to pay for it. That's what we're trying to do.
So what does a squad car cost? I thought it was like 35,000 plus all the bars and all that. No?
So the car itself, the vehicle itself costs about 34,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Fit it,
Plus your light bars and radio equipment.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
Stuff is 20,000.
Yeah.
and what we're finding is they're more expensive than what we're budgeting for.
Yep,
So,
everything's gone up.
Are they producing them this year?
I'm supposed to have that car in January.
It went from December to January now.
No, never
No.
was in December.
Oh, was it?
No, I ordered it for next year.
Okay.
so I wouldn't adjust the budget for that amount because we're gonna have to pay that one anyways, right? Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to over levy or mislead people. We're trying to appropriately plan so when it comes time to buy that second squad or replace 2, then the funds are available to do that.
So are you replacing 2 in 2022?
No, just one.
No. So we don't need 2 squad cars then,
So,
payment, or budget for 2 squad cars
We're
next year.
budgeting for part of one, not a whole squad.
should just be a partial of one every 5 years. Every 5th year, we'll buy 2.
Then we should reduce the 2022 budget.
Aren't you budgeting for part of that extra vehicle each year?
Yes.
Till you get to it? So it's 52,000 plus whatever, 20,000, whatever it is that you're budgeting per year toward that extra car.
Well,
So
this
the
year
budget
it's
stays flat.
66,214,
I get it.
and the squad's about 55, but we're finding the last one came in, when it was all said and done, was about 58. So we've got a shortfall going forward. We're trying to manage that.
I don't know how you can say there's a shortfall for that.
Well, I just did.
Well, you just said it, but I don't know how you can say it.
Well, show me how it isn't. If you're planning to
You
have
have
the
100,
funds,
you have 100,000.
Can I- please let me finish.
Okay, I'm not going to discuss
if you're
it. I'm
planning
done
to
with
have
it.
those
I'm done
funds
with it.
available,
Apparently, the council doesn't care.
that's not a true statement. What we're trying to do is have adequate funds available, so at the time when it comes to purchase 2 vehicles, adequate funds are available to do that without negatively impacting your levy. If the council decides they want to budget for what we feel the exact amount of one car is every year, we can do that. And when it comes time to budget for 2 cars, we can do that too. But again, my question still stands. Wouldn't you rather have a steady, predictable, even process that's not debated every year, so that when the time comes to replace that, because the need doesn't go away, nor does the funding requirement. People, it's predictable, you know what to expect, and it's a lot more efficient to manage it. If you want to change that, we can drop this. I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm suggesting you continue to provide adequate funds.
Maybe we should rotate our police cars every 6 years.
Well, that's what how many miles is gonna be on your car you're trading in, 70?
Yep.
I mean,
Eric's car is going to,
Mine would have been for 6 years.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
and
it's-
same in, now Sergeant Myers is gonna be for 6 years. They'll have his for 6 years.
what'll
The
have,
only reason that we're taking the silver one out is because it made more sense for that one to go to planning, zoning, or parks and rec at this time, whatever you guys decide, rather than, have them have one at 100,000 and be fixing it all the time.
I don't have a problem with rotating the police cars every 6 years and budget for a car every year.
a car a year instead of one, yeah, I would agree with that. But, because what's the mileage typically on a squad when you turn it?
So
in?
you're comfortable with a jerky levy going up and down to match that?
No, we're
process?
going to rotate them 6 years, and then it'll be one
It would be one
car
squad every
a
6
year.
years.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't cover for the 2 squads every 5. I mean, I don't know how herky-jerky
So
that
it makes
could
a
be.
really, so it makes, it really doesn't make a difference then? Yeah, it doesn't make a big difference.
Well,
Yeah, it does.
we're buying one.
We're budgeting just for one car in the budget, and that's it. We're not trying to cover for 1.5 cars.
It'll be one and a
Okay.
fifth.
But over 6 years, you spent the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's even, predictable. I mean, it doesn't matter to me, I mean, that's just how it was set up, and that's what the council direction was, so that's what we did, so if you
Well,
want to change that.
Mike, the
you change
troubling
it.
thing in my ignorant mind, which I don't understand this, and I'm not gonna try to hide, but it appears like there's 170,000 surplus. That's where it's hung up on. Now, you're trying to explain that it's not, it's carryover.
Well, it's easy to
I'm kinda
explain.
getting.
There's no $170,000. I explained that. I showed you clearly, we started at 70,000. We added to that our budgeted amount per our budget, which was 112,835. We had budget amendments of 12,128 that said, we've got $170,000 in the bank to get us through the year and to plan for the future. And then we talked about, if I go back to, I think it was page 18 of the budget document, where I walked us through that. This number is 112,835. This was our budget amendment. This is how much we've spent to date. This is our amended budget. $71,000 is what we've spent through October. We have roughly 30,000 to go, and we're planning to spend 87,564 next year. So it's not 170. We started out with 170 to take care of what we expect to add to that account during the year. Now we're giving ourselves credit for spending the items in that budget and managing what's left. Now, if you want to change the process for one of these items, then change it. But right now, we haven't done that. So what we're trying to do is plan the future. If you want to change the replacement cycle to a different term, I mean, there's all kinds of things to consider. We try to let the computers go with the car. I don't know how many people get 6 years out of a computer in a squad car. Probably not very many. We end up getting 3 to 4.
Some cars that'll work, with others it won't.
Yeah.
And 6 years.
But if you have to replace the computer in the car, because you're at year 5 or 4 or whatever, I guess the next car you can put that computer into, right? Because it'll be updated. So there's a fix. Does anybody want to consider that?
I'm confused by it, but I want to get the most out of whatever we can do within reason. But
I just want to make it clear, and that's a clear way. is
So
to
are you clear
rotate.
on the 170,000, Dave?
kind of.
Well, it's
You know, Your
125.
car's got 5 years on it and it's got 70,000 miles. Is that
Mine, yes.
correct? 5 years old, 70,000 miles. You drive 12,000 miles a year. What is the value of that car going to be when you sell it?
I'm not selling it, I'm giving it.
Okay, but if you were, I mean, every year you come up and say we should be able to get,
We got 80,
8520.
100 out of it.
Yeah.
Then had 105, which is more typical of how many
of a
miles
5-year
it was.
cycle trade.
That was, yeah, that was a 5-year.
Okay.
You can't look at his car and say that's the average, because he doesn't drive as
No,
many
you just
miles.
clarified that.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah. But, you know, as long as we're getting the most, I mean, that's, I'm not gonna try to dig into it any deeper.
Right now, I'd say we probably end up, I wouldn't take less than probably 13 to 15 for selling it. And that's why I'm saying, to keep with the cycle, it would be a good thing to turn over to planning, zoning, or parks and rec, so that they can use it, you know, for the 3, 4 years, 2 to 4 years, whatever it might be.
Or 10. I mean, they don't put any miles on it.
But we can also switch that around, put that in rotation, and they go to Parks and Rec or Planning and Zoning as we get rid of them, and then sell them off for, you know, 5,000 when we're done.
We still get calls from cab companies wanting to buy Crown Vics,
Wanting to buy what?
Crown Victorias.
Oh,
They love them. There's companies that buy them and they'll send a truck to pick them up and they refurb them.
They go crazy bidding on them.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, that auction.
Yeah, and I think today the car world is a mess. You know, this chip business is probably, from what I've read, if it gets better in 2023, that's the hopes that I've read. And used car prices are this way, and I assume new ones are doing the same thing, so it's a mess.
I would ask that we keep that 30,000 in for next year. That would be the squad cameras. Motorola Solutions did not come through. They haven't really come through for me at all. I'm really not happy with them, and I'm potentially looking at another system to go with next year. And just because we've had issues since WatchGuard was bought out by Motorola, it's been become an issue. So I'd ask that we keep that 30,000 in for next year's, so we can acquire, our squad cameras are 7 years old. So 8 years old.
That's not the body camera, that's one that's in the squad
Cameras.
itself.
Body cameras would probably end up going to, we sell those to another agency that might need them. If we did switch over, and I'll keep you more up to date on that stuff as I know more. I just figured this out at the Chiefs conference a couple weeks ago.
So you're saying we could reduce the 66,000 down to 30,000? No, I'm saying, is this the number we're talking about, though?
No, the 30,000 that I haven't spent in the capital improvement, which was for squad and.
Oh, that you were going to spend?
Right, I'm asking that we keep that, whatever you guys decide to do, keep that in there so that I can plan for that next year.
I guess we'd have to decide if we go to the 6-year rotation.
Again, that's up to you. Like I said, that'll work with some cars. And other cars will be
Not it.
having a maintenance, nickel and diming us, whatever it might be.
It's not nickels and dimes.
Keep in mind, the electric car is coming.
Yeah.
And when that happens, he's upside down with every one of his.
Yep.
And so are we.
Yeah.
I looked at that for a half second.
Move on.
Okay,
Okay, so are we done with squad cars? Make sense to everybody?
I think we should rotate I'll make a motion, we rotate every 6 years.
All right, I'll second it. Any discussion?
Yes, I think we're micromanaging the police department.
I agree.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye.
Motion fails. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so what other questions do you have on?
Road,
Okay,
you have, we started out at 600 and some thousand in September.
Can I take
Now we're
one-
down to
Can I
300.
take one step backwards? He asked for 30,000 to be kept and moved forward into 22 budget for cameras that is currently
He's-
budgeted for?
He's getting 100,000,
No,
95,000.
it's- Well, the 30, but let's move it forward. I make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
That is in assigned balances. It is in
It's in
assigned
his
balance.
budget. It's in his budget right now.
No, he's talking about in the assigned fund balance, and they were going to spend another 30,000 from assigned
we're
fund
not
balances,
asking to
right?
spend another 30,000. We're just reflecting the activity
Well,
that's in that
okay.
fund balance.
We're taking.
You said another
From
30,000.
21 to 22. That's
No,
all
we
we're
have
doing.
30,000 that we haven't spent.
You just
yet
want to leave
in
it
the
alone.
budget.
Just
Want
leave
to
it
that in
alone.
there for next year.
We'll just roll
You
it
were
into
afraid
next
we were
year.
taking the whole amount out of assigned fund balances? Is that what you're thinking?
That's what we're doing now.
No, I've got 30,000 in the budget for cameras this year, which I'm not gonna spend like
Just to carry
that
over.
to next year.
Oh, okay.
You really don't need
Carry
to
it
do
over.
that because our process already does that. So just so everybody is clear, what we've done is when you have an assigned fund balance for police equipment, we said, we have 70,000, I'll put it back up here so everybody gets it. We started the assigned fund balance with 70,178. We said, we're going to levy, our levy for that purpose is $112,835. We made budget amendments of $12,128. That means at the beginning of the year, we're expecting that, we said, okay, we have available,
We can't see that. We don't have this. There.
we have available $170,885.78. Then we start spending and reflecting the expenditures in that are against that assigned fund balance we levied for of 71,000. We ended up with a budget of 100,707, and we have 30,000 roughly that will get moved into next year.
We have a motion and a second,
Yeah,
so
that's
there's
been
no
our
problem
process.
with making a motion on it.
No, but you don't need to, because that's already
But
what our
it-
process
We already
is.
do.
Motion's already there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, and a second?
Yes, we
All
have
in
it.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
okay.
Opposed? Carries. So we're just moving, it's not 30,000,
Everyone voted
it's
yes?
29,700 or
Yes.
something.
Okay.
Marcia, for the record, if there is a squad car that I foresee can last another year, absolutely, we will have that discussion, and it'll be in there for another year. We're gonna do what's best for the city. And if there's a squad car that's sitting like mine right now, but it makes sense to, planning and zoning or Parks and Rec has one, then we won't do it. And we'll just defer to the next year or whatever it might be.
Well, and that's what I'm doing. I'm not micromanaging anything. We're doing the budget here.
Just let me be responsible for that
Yeah.
and do what's best for the city.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so to try to wrap it up on fund balances, the categories we're using are non-spendable, restricted, assigned, and unassigned. Non-spendable means things like, you've got prepaid insurance, for example, that you can only spend that on prepaid insurance. You've already paid the policy. You've just got timing differences in when the policy is spent versus when you pay for it from when it's recognized. Things like inventory, prepaid items, land held for resale, which we don't have. Restricted fund balances are items that, when there's outside external constraints posed on those dollars, things like debt service levies. Right now, our restricted fund balances consist solely of debt service levies. Assigned fund balances is what we talked about with the handout. We've been discussing the last few minutes. And then there's unassigned, which is everything else. That includes things like the balance of the phone company funds, things like that. That's really your kitty. That's how you're measured when you go out to get bonds. What is your assigned fund balance? How liquid are you? Are you meeting your current obligations, operations, and things like that? And that's it in a nutshell. So, do we have any other discussion on fund balances?
Roads.
Okay, what about roads?
Okay. On the sheet you just gave us, you have $605,929 for fund balance for roads. And then you have $359 is all we can use for road construction in 2022?
Correct.
Can you tell me
Why?
what page? Front page. Okay.
Right there, over on the
Oh,
right-hand
yeah.
side.
She's looking at page 1.
On the assigned balances.
Okay, so this works just like the police does. So in our last year's budget, we had set aside that amount. It was primarily Wild Wind Ranch Drive. That's been kind of
Don't say that anymore.
floating over for several years. And then what we did is we had a road budget in the amount of $1,473,850. Whether we plan to issue bonds in the current year or whatever. Then we made a lot of changes in July in the amount of $1,350,000. With all the budget amendments we made. You add those up, you're starting the year saying, at the beginning of the year, I'm going to have $606,929 to spend on my roads. And then
In
we follow
2022. In 2022.
in 2021. This is 2021 I'm talking about right here. And then we start walking the expenses through just like we did with the police cars, and we keep track of them every month. When we get to October,
Well, your fund balance for roads was 410,000 at the end of October.
yep, we're getting to the end of October, but we're not done with the year yet. We've still got, I've got it somewhere, we've got some other things we got to take care of yet.
What do we have in road construction that we need to do yet? But my real question
We have the
is
rest of-
why, when you have 606,000 there for fund balance, which is actually 410,000 now from October, why you're only using 330,000 that you're levying for, or that you're using out of that assigned fund balance?
Because we have additional expenditures to get us through the rest of the year on that. I
And-
reflected,
Okay. We have a couple 100,000 in November and December that you're going to spend in road construction?
I didn't say that. What I estimated that balance to be was $329,000.
And after that payment to that 100 and whatever it was,
Mr.
150.
Perkins.
Yeah. After that, there was 410,000.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
So hang on, bear with me. So what we have left to do to get through the year is we have to make up the deficit right above it. Out of that, we've got 25,000 left to pay on the crosswalks. We haven't paid yet. That comes out of there. We have $12,000 for the county to put in there. We've still got around $4,000 of legal fees to get through to close out Perkins Road. We've got 23,000 left to finish your stuff in the building down there, the security and all that stuff. We've got $18,000 to pay out of there for chip sealing. We've got about
Okay.
20,000 left in engineering to pay through the end of the year on the road projects. So when you take that into account, that 410,000 gets to about 329.
okay, thank
So-
you
so
very
that's how
much.
we
I
did that.
appreciate it.
And that was the intent of separating those and monitor, and that's why we monitor those on a monthly basis. And so, just so you understand where that comes into play on the budget, if you look at your budget, what we're doing, I'm gonna get you to the right page here, it's probably on about page 20, I would think.
Are you talking about page 26, where you're bonding 700 and using 329?
Yeah, this is page
Yeah.
26. I'm reflecting that we're financing some of our capital outlay with that fund balance. I'm using all of it to finance it, okay? So what we're trying to do is get our best guess at what that's going to
Yeah.
be and what the impact is on our levy.
Yeah, and I'm just asking the
Yep.
question because I don't know about those bills that were coming up in November and December.
Yeah, we've
Thank
got
you, I
the-
appreciate that
We have the one for
explanation.
cement work, and then I think there's a small paving bill. About 1,900.
I thought the crosswalks were already paid for, but that was the pipe. We accepted the bid, huh?
Just got the final bill on the pavement.
Yeah,
And the chip sealing.
yeah, so we've got
From the county.
those things. What else you got for questions?
I have one other thing, because I want to make this at least 3 hours.
Okay. I got no place to be.
No, all I want to do, all I want to comment.
If you're gonna make it 3 hours, Dave gets to put his hat back on.
I want discussion on whether we should keep that skid steer, because the trade-in value is close to $30,000. I think we should trade it in on the new one. I just don't see any reason with, you're putting 200 hours on it a year that Public Works can't take care of when Park and Rec needs something. How often do they need something? I know this year they went down and dug post holes for that shade feature at the pickleball, and they did some shade thing at the dog park, but how often does that actually happen?
How much snow are we gonna get?
We're buying a really nice skid steer and snow blower for snow, and we just bought a snow plow and truck.
When do you think if we ordered it today, when do you think I'll get that skid steer installed?
2024. I don't know.
It would probably get here the fall of 2022 right now.
So, okay.
Why
So
are we ordering the skid steer this early on in the year?
we're not, it's in the budget for next year. He's trying to be funny.
No, that's literally right now, when I talked to the last time I talked to the salesman, if you order that, a brand new skid steer today, you've got at least 6 to 9 months before it'll be a product. The snow blower, he told me the production of that snow blower that we're looking at will be the fall of '22.
The start of it?
We're running into a lot of, you guys haven't been aware of this, but even the clarifiers that we
Yeah.
just bid the project on,
Yeah. They gonna slip?
Yes.
huge.
Oh.
Soonest they can get the parts here is June or July. They cannot take the tanks down in June or July. I cannot afford to have the tanks down in June or July. I can't handle the flows without those tanks. So there's things that are happening out there that
Beyond our
out of my
control.
control.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it is, and with the what we have today.
I'm still waiting for ammo that I ordered in August of 2020.
But I really think that we should trade that skid steer in. I really do. $30,000, I think we should seriously consider or take action on that. We're going to reduce the budget by $30,000 and trade in that skid steer. In a community this size, and for as much as we use it, we do not need 2 skid steers.
Ted, what is the condition of that skid steer?
It's a good skid steer. The problem we have with it, it's a 277 cap, okay? And it's 32 gallons a minute of flow, hydraulic flow.
You want to talk up here?
I can't,
Yeah, I need to spend a little time with you on this.
we have a 277 cap, D is the model we have. It has 32 gallons a minute of hydraulic flow. Our snow blower, that's on the low end of the capacity of the snow blower. The new unit we're looking at has 40 gallons a minute, so that's a almost 24% increase in hydraulic flow. So when you get into heavier snow and slush, it has the capacity to keep doing and not bog down. That's what happens with the 277 today. That was the reason we were looking at updating the skid steer. Now that blower realized we're chewing up ice and snow with this. It's meant for that, but it's pretty hard on it. We've already rebuilt the auger once on it. It could happen at any time where that auger just deflects and we gotta replace it again or rebuild it.
But that could happen with a new one, too.
That could happen with the new one. I'm not
Right.
saying that it would,
Yeah.
but at least we'd go back under a new warranty, new machine with the warranty. So,
I'm not trying to get rid of the purchase of the new one. I'm just saying we should trade in the current skid steer we
I just
have.
know that the park department has asked, and we're tied up
But-
with it or whatever, they're asking for the unit.
But Ted, then the park department is gonna wanna upgrade one of the employees to be an operator status. You see how this all goes?
Yeah.
And then they're gonna need a bigger garage to put the skid steer in. This all snowballs. And so, we need to take a good look at what our next 2 to 5 year plan is.
I
You
have 3 guys that are operating equipment right now when we have a snowstorm.
Yeah?
We always had the 4th person from the park. I'm sitting there, I'm the floater guy, I run back and forth to wherever I'm needed, so I don't count on me because I'm running anything. But
Okay, well.
the 4th person was always been the
And
park
maybe
department.
maybe that
And
is,
that's what we're trying to get back to, is having that 4th person, because,
well,
we got
as we get back
vacations and
to
other
it though,
things.
I would just like it to be calculated and communicated. Where are we going? What are our needs and what do we need to do? I don't know that we need to duplicate a Bobcat that we put 200 hours a year on, We don't use it that much.
No.
It's obvious. The snow blower, sometimes we have a lot of snow, sometimes we don't have any. I don't know what the snow's gonna be like this
I have
winter.
no idea.
But there's
Wish I
been
had a
years
crystal
when
ball.
we've had to plow 2 times or not, so it's just the need. Last year we did the ladder truck, the city hall, the fire hall, the new $350,000 plow truck that you had. I go through your list, you got the new 1-ton for another 80 grand. Do we really need all that stuff this year? I mean, that's kind of a
Well,
heart-to-heart question.
Last year was supposed to be the skid steer. You remember, I came to you when you guys were looking for,
I don't remember that at all.
I came to you when you guys were looking for
Yeah.
money. That was one of the
Yeah.
things I
'Cause-
dropped last year.
Because we were in trouble.
We were in a bit of a trouble. I
Yes.
dropped it because we thought we could make it another year. Can I
But-
make it another year? I don't know. I
don't
I
know.
would like to.
You know,
Well, I'll tell you, I would like to make a motion that we reduce the budget by, is that 20, you said that wasn't accurate, but is that 29,000 accurate for a trade-in?
That's what he told me it was the
Okay.
trade-in today.
I would like to reduce the budget by that amount because we should be trading in that skid
Well,
steer.
And you did you look at the purchase price of this skid steer?
Yes, I
I put
did.
80 in it and it's actually 72.5.
Yes, I did. So we could actually reduce the budget by 40,000.
Okay, here's my last thing to say about it.
Okay,
Realize that if I can't get this skid steer until this coming 22 fall, I'm in a new contract year with the state bidding.
yes.
I have no idea what the price is gonna be for that unit.
Yes, so we could reduce the budget by 30,000 and possibly cover that cost,
I would hope it would cover it.
yeah.
I disagree. I think you leave the money there. If we have a bad year in the spring, if a tornado comes through, we're gonna eat up every nickel of that, and he's not gonna get a skid
Well,
steer.
tornado comes through, we hit FEMA.
I'd just soon listen to Ted. I don't know all the details about the skid steer. I don't want to get into I got to trust somebody.
Yeah, he's, in the budget, he's got $80,000
Well,
because he's
I know.
not trading
I
it in.
understand, but
Now,
30,000,
now I'm saying
we're
is that,
spending a lot of money in the city. That's just the way it is. You do spend money here. $30,000 is not going to break Cross Lake.
no,
Please, Tom,
it's not,
come
but
on
do you want 2 skid steers?
I don't know enough about all of the things that they do and have two. You apparently know more than I do. I don't know all the details. I just trust that the operation they've been doing is very good. And they're watching the equipment. They're not spending carelessly, in my opinion.
well, it's just, there's 200 hours a year that they use it.
Well, I know.
You know, and so to have 2 of them,
But if you got one it's in halfway decent shape and you're not spending 80 grand to get a second one, and you got a good one, you can eke out a few more years.
Chip just asked me a question.
okay?
Today, if it broke down, how available are parts? I have no idea. I mean, we're looking for a hydraulic motor for the street sweeper, for reconditioning the street sweeper. I can't even find it.
So then we would have 0 skid steers in the city of Cross Lake. Apparently, that's what we will do.
Well, I'll tell you, you know, it's a
I'm
nice
just-
city, but we sure got everything we got is.
You don't
awful
have a
nice.
second on that?
Okay. What was the motion? Oh, she wants.
The motion was to reduce
the
the budget, 30,000,
29,000.
reflecting a trade-in on the skid steer.
Could you clarify that? Reducing the budget versus reducing the levy are two different things?
Reducing the levy, I'm sorry, reducing the levy by 30,000.
Okay, that's a motion. Do we have a second on it? You don't have a second, Marcia.
Looks like we're gonna have 2 skid steers.
Well, I'll tell you what, the appetite of the people in town, it's not there. All these nice shiny trucks and everything we got, and we're gonna spend another $250,000. How about the mower? What's wrong with the mower?
This is the flail mower that goes on the front of the unit. It is just, and TJ was here, it's so bent and torqued and out of shape.
Which, like a brush hog, you mean, or?
Yeah, it's a flail one that goes on the brush hog, that goes on the front of it, it's worn out, it's well used. We welded on it, we repaired it.
Did you buy it when you bought the machine?
No, we've had 2 machines of those.
Okay. And the sweeper, and I mean, everything down the line, everything is, we gotta get
We've been
new.
wanting to replace the sweeper for a couple of years, and we haven't because the representative is telling us the new machines are.
Crap.
You can't blame us for that one, Ted.
I can't, but so we were looking at putting a new hydraulic, that's the issue is hydraulic motor is getting weak, so we're looking for a new hydraulic motor. Manufacturer, the reps can't even find that. So.
And the 1-ton truck is shot?
1-ton truck has been, and Tom can testify that, that was a,
I
little
just-
lemon when we got it. We actually started with the 2006, and the first 600 miles, the truck was hauled back to Mills Ford twice because it blew the rings right through the side of the transmission. So then it gave us the 2007, which basically I think they took the parts off of the 06 and gave us the 7. It has been, I mean, we haven't used it very much, and I just had to put $3,800 in the brakes.
So why don't you use it very much? What is the use of it?
We use it in the winter for plowing all these narrow roads. We got all these little 14 and 12-foot roads that go out in the peninsulas. The big plows don't fit. There's no.
No, I get it,
So
but you
that's
also
what we use for
got, you
that.
got 2 or 3 pickups that you do that with
They're
too,
not big
right?
enough to, and strong enough to push that much snow. When that snow gets out there and blows, you get on the end of Anchor Point and the snow drifts in, it's either the snow blower or you
But,
got.
I mean, that's what you should use, is a snowblower, a Bobcat. You should take it over and push it out.
And the people that.
Once or twice a year, if need be, make a
Well, it's more than
circle.
once or twice. Every time it snows, that blows back in. You got the Perkins Road, the end of Perkins Road where it goes down the hill, we gotta take care of. You got end of Anchor Point, you got the end of, Lake Street down there, you've got Ivy Lane, you've got, I mean, literally, folks, you guys have allowed planning and zoning to take and say, we can build right to the road almost. We have one on Anchor Point, I'm gonna put the snow on the guy's front step. When I go
Out on the resort on Anchor Point?
on the very end of that, where they're just building that great big house right alongside, it's gonna go up against the front door.
Push the fence in, yeah, I don't know, I mean, but, Tom, what do you gotta say about this?
Because I know by the time it hits the truth and taxation hearing, it's too late. What I tried to do when I went through this budget, and I emailed all of you, I was trying to come up with a realistic budget where things, you look at the last year, 2 years, and have they spent it, have they not spent it? I sort of disagree with Councilman Schrupp saying, well, it's only 1,000 here and 1,000 there. Some of the ones I came up with, there's probably $40+ thousand, you know, just doing a couple big ones. The engineering for Public Works, 25,000 in there. Engineering is accounted for in the projects. You know, you could cut 20,000 out of that and go down to 5 if Phil has, you know, a few bills for coming to Public Works meetings, so be it. I think that's 6,000 for, there was 6,000 where I think it's,
That's an in and out. That goes to the county attorney's office.
I know, but it's budgeted twice. It's budgeted under police and it's budgeted under the general fund. And, you know, I also agree with Councilman Schrupp that I don't like seeing you spend down your cash, and I agree with Mike as far as trying to keep your levy as close to what it is, and this will probably irritate Marcia because I'm not agreeing with her on lowering the levy. If you can generate more money, a surplus in next year's budget by levying the same amount you did last year, I think you've done a wonderful job. The other thing I'll say as a member of the Public Works Commission, we've got big problems coming up, and I think you need a probably a $3 an hour increase. That'd be another 18,000.
For sewer, month.
For
yeah.
sewer. That's 18,000 less that's gonna get transferred out of the general fund to make up for the sewer deficit. And, you know, we've talked about, you know, the pumps or the lift station controls. You know, there's, I don't know how many in the cities, but we talked about doing a couple at a time. Well, that 18,000 would probably do a couple of them. And, you know, I'd have to ask Mike this, if you levied the same amount dollar-wise that you did last year, with the budget you've got now, would there be a surplus?
It'd be close to zero if we levied the same
I mean,
amount.
I think that's good.
If we levied the same amount as we did last year, we'd have $18,740 left over.
Yeah.
And
if
that's
you did
shown
a-
on your, in the
If you
budget.
did a $3 increase, you'd have 36,000. And what I'm saying about these areas that I picked up here, I'm just saying, do a realistic budget so that line items make sense. You know, if you need to, you know, take that 20,000 from Public Works Engineering and the 6,000 that's double included, put 25,000 in a reserve account to start saving for TJ's building needs, or, I'm not saying lower the levy, you know, and I apologize if I'm taking time, but
If I can talk, and I really appreciate you going through this, but the information we need is not here to support me agreeing with you, or you're using your vast experience and saying, this doesn't look good, because we're almost done with a year, and you haven't spent all the money that is in your budget for this year. So the information that we don't have is some detailed stuff on each one of these. It says, show me your expenses to the end of the year. We don't have
okay,
that,
but
you know?
what I did was I took what the packet that Mike has, and that has 2020 and 2021 through October. So you've got 2 years to look at, and when something, you're budgeting 30, or I'll just use the engineering one. You're budgeting 25,000, and for the last 2 years, you haven't spent $1,200 of it. To me, that's a red flag that, okay, this is just fluff in the budget that's, you know, you're budgeting and it doesn't get spent. I'm saying take that money, and if you need to set it in a reserve account for some future project, and we know we've got plenty of future projects, you know, and Marcia's always harping on the designated fund balances. That's where I'm agreeing with her. And when I was here, we used to do that, where we would actually include in the budget a line item that was gonna go in a reserve account. You know, when Ted needed a new mower or a new forklift or whatever it was, you know, if it's $30,000, we'd start budgeting $7,000, $8,000 a year. So in the third year, you know, you've got half the money in a fund, and then you budget for the rest. So, I mean, you know, it's been done in the past, and that's why you have all these designated reserve accounts that, you know, if you're not gonna spend the money in a year, then put it in that reserve account so that you've got money when the thing comes up. But I really think you need to look at that sewer rate.
Did Public Works?
I thought they talked about it.
No, we didn't.
Oh,
We talked about it, we said, we need to take it to the council and increase it, and I stood up here and I said, what do you want to do? And I didn't get
And it never came back to the council, and I'm not,
We can talk about it
it's gonna sound like
now.
I'm aiming at Mike, and I don't
No,
mean
yeah.
to, but, you know, you're the numbers guy. When you're,
Well,
you
you
know,
know-
if Public Works needs to start looking at a rate increase in the summer, that's something you should probably at least tell Ted, okay, tell Public Works, they need to,
And we did that. The
but it
public,
didn't go
I
anywhere.
thought we said to do everything like at least 3% a year on all of
I
them.
didn't have a time to look up the,
Fees?
Remember, Shari
You know-
even had the sheet that showed the last increases. We even had that for everybody.
That was last year, I think.
you know,
all right,
The charges
Here's
at
a thought
the
for you
rent,
folks.
Everything should go up 3% at least a year.
okay. Well, why don't we remedy it now?
comes.
I will make a motion that we increase it $3 a month, the sewer rate.
I would second that.
Starting when?
For the December
January
billing
1st.
due in June, or January, is that?
January.
For December usage. Or
Oh,
in
effective January
first-
1st,
yeah.
so whenever you bill, effective
We've been
January
doing
1st.
it,
A month
the
behind?
January billing due
Yeah.
February.
Okay.
It's
Whatever,
January
that's up to you
usage.
guys. I'm just thinking,
That will give me time to notice people too,
Yeah.
because they're going to be not happy. I'll give them Marcia's number. She made the motion.
you want me to stay longer?
Yeah.
Effective January 1st.
Oh, we got 4, we got all
Okay,
night.
then I would like to
Oh,
make
did we
it,
vote?
No,
oh,
We have not.
well, did you, okay, you got a motion, or was it second?
Yeah.
I seconded it.
Sorry, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, all in favor.
Aren't you done?
I'm baked.
Have we
Put
voted
a
on
fork
what
in
the
it.
levy will be for 2022?
December, whatever.
that's at the truth and
13.
taxation.
Yeah,
December 8th,
But
or
it's,
whatever it is. Okay.
we're just, there really weren't any changes in the levy.
no, the only
the
really
budget.
change we talked about
Tried, but no
on,
changes.
on the budget was, we still have yet to determine where we're going to come in on the road project and the project for 66. That'll really dictate whether or not you want to issue bonds for the road project, or you don't want to issue bonds, or how you want to allocate the ARPA funds. Those are all decisions that don't have to be made today.
March or something.
That's a March decision. So you've got time to do
Are you
that.
talking about the storm sewer project? The 66,
Yes.
whatever, that one?
Yep. Yeah, so we got to decide, that'll dictate, it doesn't matter which project we spend it on, but it will if we decide to do one and not the other.
What have you seen for interest rates?
I'm seeing them starting to creep up slightly. I'm seeing, a lot of the bonds I've seen lately are refunding bonds that are out there. I'm seeing smaller sales that are in that 1.2, 1.5. It all depends on their credit rating. I've seen some anticipation certificates and some odd things like that we don't deal with here, but they're all over. The larger issues seem to carry a lower rate. The smaller issues seem to be in that 1.5% range. It all depends on what it is. But they're still relatively low, is the point. So,
But we did tell the engineer to proceed with the sewer extension project, right? Well,
yep, you told it, it was directed to get them ready to bid.
the feasibility
Yep.
study or report.
I can give you one brief update. He sent out letters this week for the
Ted?
easements.
Storm sewer easement?
All the
All the easements.
All the easements, he sent this week letters. I'm expecting the city hall should start getting phone calls because the letter should be there today or tomorrow. So that's the latest update. Otherwise, they're proceeding with design, so.
So our decision will be made in March, and then that will be when the bids are actually in.
You've given them authorization to proceed with what they're doing right now, to get it to the bidding point. At that point, you guys have to make your final decision whether you're gonna go for it or not.
That's after we get the bids.
Yes.
Yeah, see, Phil will come back with a set of plans ready for bid, and he'll get that posted. And then he'll have his engineer's estimate in there saying, hey, I think it's gonna be X. And then the bids will come out, bidding process will occur, they'll have a certain amount of time to respond, and then we'll say, wow, these are really close, we got good bids on the process, or they came in way under, or they're way over, and that decision can be made then.
You know what the one thing that's in the shortest supply right now is the underground pipe.
Yeah.
And the price has gone through the roof on pipe. I mean,
You can't win.
what we used to pay $50, $60 for a stick of pipe, today is $180.
Yeah, it might not be a good year to do a lot of projects.
So, I have a friend that's with the city of Anoka. He has searched for almost a year to get pumps for a new lift station project in their city. They went ahead and built a new golf course and they just said, well, we'll take care of the lift station. They didn't ask him if he could get parts, but he's been looking for a year and just found 2 4-inch pumps. But now he can't get the VFD drives to run the pumps. So they're just doing a handoff auto control right now, just a simple control rather than the VFD drive, because they can't get them.
And I suspect we're at the beginning of the problem.
I agree.
Well, they're telling me to have 3 months of chemical on hand.
Yeah, I think maybe you should have 6.
So the Dave's comment about the project, this, we have to keep in mind, we would forego 315,000. And.
Well, we'd
Is
go,
the engineered wasted? It's not really wasted, is it?
For what, if we don't do anything?
We'd have to go through, yeah, if we, all those meetings we'd have to do again.
yeah, you'd have to do all the public hearings
The
again.
design would be done.
You'd have a design, and then, you know, it'd be sitting on the shelf, shovel-ready, so to speak, for bidding. You know, you'd have some cost to get it updated for pricing and engineer's estimate and anything that changed in that time. And now, remember, we've spent quite a bit of money on trying to figure out what to do with these projects or not already. You know, at some point, you gotta decide if you're gonna do them or not.
What if we'd have done them a year and a half ago, it would have been half price, and that's before things went up.
Everybody will hold off and we'll be the only ones bidding. Then we'll get a good deal.
Well, you know,
Right
it's,
now, the engineers are just swamped with projects. Everybody's trying to get ahead of the.
so what is the $1 trillion infrastructure gonna do? Is that gonna do anything with us?
A lot of the
I know, that's what we're competing with.
So that's
So,
bridges and
I mean-
highways and.
Okay. Are we done?
All right, make
I
a
move to
motion.
adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
You got it, Mike?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you wrong. I just would take all this extra surplus and put it back in the. Just we spent like crazy.
You'll remember when she opened the door.